morning, and welcome to the 2020 Town of Miami Lakes debate. Today, we will see the State House of Representative candidates from District 103 and District 110. Additionally, we'll see the Town Council candidates from Seat 1 and Seat 3. 19 years ago, I was walking the halls here at Miami-Dade College, and if it wasn't for the inspiration that I received here, I might not be the mayor today. So the amount of people that Miami-Dade College opens their doors to is truly amazing, and I really want to thank them for providing their space today, their entire team. I mean, this is a presidential setup, so kudos to the team at Miami-Dade College. Additionally, I wanted to thank the Miami Lakes Economic Development Committee and the Miami Lakes Bar Association for coming together to make sure that this happened today, this public service, which is truly amazing. I also wanted to point out our two moderators, which I believe are two of the best that we could have chosen. First, we have a former county mayor who's a Democrat, and we also have a former chair of the Miami-Dade County School Board who's a Republican. So we wanted to make sure that this debate was fair and balanced. And with no further ado, I want to now introduce the chair of the Miami Lakes Economic Development Committee, Eddie Blanco.
Mike, can you hear me now? Wonderful. Should I start from the top? Okay. Hello, my name's Eddie Blanco. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the introduction. I'd like to acknowledge the Town of Miami Lakes staff, the council, and the Economic Development Committee for helping put this all together. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the Miami Lakes Bar, Miami-Dade College for putting together this wonderful production. Thank you. I'd like to also acknowledge that this will be broadcasted through the Miami-Dade College cable channel network, Miami Lakes Facebook and YouTube channels live. And I'd like to say that we have taken precautions as it relates to CDC with very minimal audience, putting this all through live Facebook feeds and having proper social distancing and mask wearing. And I'd like to announce the start of this Florida House Representatives. I'd like to introduce the representatives, or the candidates for state representative for District 103, Mr. Tom Fabricio, Republican. They're wonderful. And Miss Cindy Polo, Democrat. Next to the stage, I'd like to invite the District 10 candidates, Miss Annette Collazo, Democrat, and Mr. Alex Rizzo, Republican. And I'd like to ask to come to the stage Mr. Frank Bolaños and our moderator, Mr. Alex Panelis. Wonderful. I'd like to give you a quick intro of Mr. Bolaños. Mr. Frank Bolaños is the educator and community leader accustomed to developing strategic partner and private partnerships. His love for education and developing the whole child has led to startups of several charter schools and preschools. He is a co-founder, along with his wife, Frances, of Avante Guard Academy Charter Schools and AGA Scholarship Preschool. Bolaños is the former chairman of the Miami-Dade County School Board and the nation's fourth largest school district, chaired the school district during the county-wide strategic planning process. Bolaños is also the former Fortune 500 senior executive that utilizes leadership skills, experience, and strategics and energy to formally impact the lives of others. He's also a resident of Northwest Miami-Dade County. And next, Mr. Alex Pinellas. Alex Pinellas is a resident of Miami Lakes, a leader, a neighbor, and a friend to many Miami Lakers. As a former mayor of Miami-Dade County for 8 years, Pinellas is recognized to be a reformer and a consensus builder. Today, he provides insight on a wide variety of political and governmental topics, not only for Univision, but for radio networks, but for many other local and national media outlets as well. Pinellas is the principal of AP Consulting LLC, a business development and business affair consulting practice built on the professional and political experience of the former Miami-Dade County mayor. On February 25th, 2020, Mr. Alex Pinellas and his wife Lilium celebrated 26 years of marriage. They are the proud parents of 3 children. And with that, I turn it over to Mr. Bolaños. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Blanco. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Special additional thanks to all the organizers of this event. Today will be a great day, and today is a very special day for the residents of the areas that you either represent or aspire to represent, to be able to hear your views, and also to be able to get a sense of who you really are. And I know that we all come to these events with particular ideas and talking points in mind, but this is really an opportunity for you to also reach not only to your minds, but to your heart, and give the viewers and listeners a sense of who you really are. I'd like to go over the terms of the debate that were sent to you. I'd also like to ask you at the end if you will agree with a thumbs up to allow me in a round robin type of fashion to try to mix it up a little bit in a couple of occasions. I've also invited Mayor Pinellas to feel free to jump in if he feels there's something that he can add, or a prompt to help you get a little bit deeper into some of these issues. And it's an honor to share the stage as moderator with Mayor Pinellas.
Thank you, Frank. Likewise.
So let me go over real quick. You'll have 2 minutes for opening statements and 2 minutes for closing statements. We'll start with candidates for District 103, and then we'll go to 110. But again, I will ask if you'll give me a thumbs up now to allow me to go back and forth a couple of times. We decided to have the candidates from one House seat first, the others separate, only to allow viewers to have a better idea of the kind of head-to-head comparison. But if you'll give me a thumbs up, we'll try to mix it up a little bit just to get a little bit more energy, and also because at the end of the day, 2 of you are going to be working together for issues in Tallahassee. I believe we were going to determine who goes first with the flip of a coin. I forgot to ask whether we did that or not. And if not, if you allow me to just pick somebody, we'll do that. So the idea is that whoever I pick to answer the question first will have 2 minutes. Then the competitor will have 2 minutes. I'll go back then to the person that I asked first to come back with a bit of a rebuttal or go a little bit deeper, or prompts, something of that nature. We have an hour, so if we mix it up a bit, that's why I wanted a thumbs up. We may not have the exact time, 30 minutes and 30 minutes. It may vary a little bit, but if you're okay with that, I think it'll be more interesting for the viewers. Okay.
Right.
All right. As you know, we've received questions from residents. I'd like to start with a question to the candidates in 103, and I'd like to start out.
Frank, you want to start with the intros?
I'm sorry.
The 2-minute introduction per candidate, I think pursuant to your rules.
Thank you.
You asked me to interject, right?
See, it's smart of me to do that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit rusty, so it's great to get out here and kind of get the juices flowing. So yeah, let's start with that, and let's start with Representative Polo, please, with a 2-minute introduction, and again, try to tell folks not only what you believe in, but who you really are.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Cindy Polo, and you have probably heard a lot about me. And today you will hear a whole lot more. However, in spite of the ton of mailers you have received, the commercials you've seen on TV, or the social media posts that you have read about me, this election in House District 103 is not about me. It is about you, your issues, our community, and about the type of real representation that you need in Tallahassee. You will hear today about my personality, my attitude, my social media post, my temperament. You will hear about appropriations and names on bills. You will hear about my anger, my votes on a flawed budget. You will hear cleverly crafted sentences meant to mislead you. You will hear about my unwillingness to work with others. You will hear that I'm not nice enough. You will hear about out-of-state donors. You will hear a constant attack on my effectiveness. You may also hear about the needs of our district and the issues plaguing us for decades. But you will hear my opponent blame me for all of it and give others a free pass. But no matter how much of those in the majority, or my opponents, or his friends, or his donors, want to make this about me, and or the last 2 years, this election has never been about me. It is about you, our homes, our community, and our willingness to stand up and fight for our district, especially when it's difficult. My hope is that today, at least, we can focus on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fabricio.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here on stage with Ms. Polo for the first time, and it's nice to meet you in person.
Yeah.
It's actually been many years. We attended HML together many years ago.
Yeah.
Again, my name is Tom Fabricio. I'm running for the Florida House of Representatives. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a neighbor. We have 2 little girls, Veronica and Alexandra. Laura and I have been married for 10 years, and we're members of the community. I decided to run because I was concerned about what was going on in our community, about actually getting effective representation, as Ms. Polo mentioned. We do need effective representation in the community. We need an advocate for us in the community that can build consensus, not only in Tallahassee, but also locally. I think it's wonderful that Mr. Pinellas is here, Mayor Pinellas is here, because he is a consensus builder. And we need to build consensus. We need to be able to reach across the aisle to get things done. We need to talk about the actual issues that are important and do work to get those issues to come to fruition. And I'll do that. I will work. I have been working heavily. I've been talking to a lot of people. I'm on pace to knock on over 20,000 doors this cycle. I started knocking on doors back in August of last year, and I've spoken to many residents. I've qualified by petition to be here. My name is on the ballot because I qualified by petition and because I worked very hard in a primary election that was contested to win that primary election and to earn this place to be here today, to represent you, the residents of District 103. And I look forward to doing that. Ardently, putting myself aside. My interests, my personal interests are not what's at stake here. It's getting representation for the people of Miramar, the people of Palm Springs North, the people of Miami Lakes, Hialeah and Hialeah Gardens, the people inside of Courtly Manor. They need representation, and that's what I'm here to provide. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fabricio. And now for the first question that I'd like to start out with, and it's kind of like starting us out with a bang, so to speak. It refers to the issue of blasting, and the question, more elegantly put, is what would you do to provide genuine relief to homeowners who are subject to rock mining blasts? Let's start with Mr. Fabricio, please.
Thank you so much. So blasting is the #1 issue in the district. There's no question about that. And we need to come up with some creative solutions to be able to address the blasting issue. Like I mentioned in the opening, I will build consensus to address this matter in a creative manner. I've already been speaking to Senator Rene Garcia, who will be the commissioner in District 13, to address it from the angle, from the perspective of the county, as well as from perspective of the state. I think there's things that we can do at the state level as well, with getting some Florida Forever funds to buy a strip of that land, that mine, and create a buffer and a boundary between the actual blasting zone and the residential community. It's hard work, but I think we can do it. And also, we're going to work to file legislation to repeal the blaster's immunity and to lower the actual blasting levels.
Thank you, Mr. Fabricio. Representative Polo.
Thank you, Mr. Bolaños. I certainly applaud my opponent for the optimism on what can be done with the blasting. We, this past session, had a Speaker of the House that represents many of you and represents half the district which is affected by the blasting. The most powerful man in the Florida House of Representatives. The lack of power or lack of willingness has not necessarily been the problem that we face in District 103 and neighboring districts. It has been a choice to side with special interests decade after decade. I invite voters to visit followthemoney.org. Follow the donations and contributions of an industry that has continuously damaged the homes in our community, and follow where those contributions have landed and with which candidates they have. The reality is, for 2 years in a row, I have put forth a bill. You will hear that the reason the bill is not heard is because probably I just don't smile enough. But the bill has not been heard because the interest and desire to actually take action is not there. We on the floor debated my very first session on whether or not dogs should be allowed into bars. We debated that for about 2 hours and a half. Dogs in a bar were more important to the Speaker of the House, a resident of Miami Lakes, than to address proper legislation that was not only created by both sides of the aisle, but by many of his friends. So when we talk about blasting, I wish that I could sum it up that, like in the mailers that you've received, of that I will lower blasting levels. It is not that easy. If it was that easy, it would have been done a long time ago. We are up against a lot. We all are.
Thank you. Mr. Fabricio, would you like to have a response to that, or?
Sure,
follow-up
absolutely.
question?
Ms. Polo didn't respond to the question as to what she's going to do. She's pointing the finger at Speaker Oliva and several others with regard to this issue. Unfortunately, the fact is that Ms. Polo didn't actually get any bills passed whatsoever in her 2 years in office. And there were other first-year minority party members that did get bills passed. It's my understanding that one of the items on some of the literature that she sends out is that she believes that she wants to be an activist. She wants to point out flaws for everybody else. And it seems that that doesn't help in building consensus. I will work to build consensus. I have a concrete plan that I'm going to work with folks at the county level, with folks at the state level, and negotiate to work this out and to reduce the blasting levels. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it. Now I'd like to go into an area. There are two questions that come together in the same breath, so to speak. And at this point, I'd like to, if you'll allow me, you had given me the thumbs up to kind of involve all four candidates. Sure. The thumbs up there, that's good. So this question has to do with the issue of what is your stance on the opening of roadways that have a detrimental impact on small local governments? I believe it's commonly referred to as the bridge issue as well. Related question, your position on state preemption of local government regulations. I think for it to be fair for the representatives, those aspiring to District 110, if you'll start with do your 2-minute intro now, and then we'll jump right into the answer to those questions. So I'd like to ask Ms. Collazo if she'll do her 2-minute introduction, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to speak with everyone here today, to exchange ideas and to share with people that are tuning in from home. A little bit about myself. For the past 12 years, I've been a teacher and an instructional leader in schools in Miami-Dade County, and I've taught at HML as well, one of our district schools. During this time, I've also been involved with my community in several civic and volunteer engagement efforts. I was a founding board member of Engage Miami, which is a nonpartisan group that was meant to engage young people in our local politics. I also founded a community group called Que Pasa Hialeah, which translates to What's Up Hialeah, and we basically were there to support our local businesses and to engage in our community life in District 110, actually. And I'm also an active member of Kiwanis Club of Hialeah. I'm running for two main reasons. First of all, as a teacher, Over the years, I've seen that many of the challenges that we're facing in our communities, Northwest Dade, 110, 103, South Florida, these challenges are reflected in my students. Our young people don't live in a bubble. They are impacted by the very real adult problems that they're seeing at home. And so, I'm here, I'm running for my students, their families, our community. These challenges include economic issues, a lack of access to affordable quality health care, and a lack of educational resources, as well as other quality of life issues such as traffic, mine blasting. So as a teacher, I'm running for the well-being of our community. I'm also running because I truly believe that I can be a voice for our community. I believe that the people in our community are tired of the partisan politics, people taking on ideological battles that are disconnected from our daily realities, people serving special interests. People are tired of that. We have real problems that we need to address and we need to get to work to, especially with this pandemic. And I believe that I can be a voice for everyone in my community, Democrats and Republicans alike. We have to work with people on all sides. I believe that I represent a balanced option for what has become a very divisive politics. So this is what the voters deserve. This is what I will bring, and I would be absolutely honored to have District 110 residents' votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collazo. Mr. Rizzo?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bolaños. Thank you, Mayor Pinellas. Thank you to the audience members. Thank you to the town of Miami Lakes and Miami-Dade College for hosting this. Thank you to the other candidates and to Representative Polo, of course, who is one of the candidates. Thank you for being here today. District 110 has certain challenges. It's an older, growing elderly population. We have, it was one of the hardest hits with the COVID-19 pandemic. Many people were impacted. Many people lost their lives. I'd like to give my condolences to all that may be listening that might have been impacted or know someone that did pass and was impacted by this. We are living in very interesting times, and this pandemic has brought about many, many questions. The next legislative session is going to be one of great questions and very tough decisions. Economically, socially, fiscally, of course, we're going to be dealing with a lot of things. And picking a representative, choosing that representative and electing that person to go and represent the people of 110, the people of Hialeah, the people of Miami Lakes, the people of what's known as the Country Club of Miami area, is a very difficult choice and one that is extremely impactful in our lives. As someone who has been a child, a young man, a college student working on his own to get his bachelor's and master's degree, someone who has raised a family, someone who has been an educator, a teacher, a school administrator, a small business owner, a job creator, and also served my community all in 110 throughout my lifetime, I believe I am that choice. I believe experience counts. And as my opponent did mention in her opening statement, someone that will represent our community, which I currently do as the representative for Community Council 5 to Miami-Dade County government. So I believe that I am that candidate. I welcome this opportunity to speak today and to join everyone in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Ms. Collazo, would you like to take a stab at that question having to do with the issue of preemptive rights of state government, preempting the rights of local government, conflicts between one municipality and the other, what I believe has been referred to in general terms as the bridge issue between Hialeah and Miami Lakes, and I'm curious as to what your position would be on an issue like that, since given the configuration of the district map, you may find yourselves having to kind of umpire, referee between two different municipalities and its leaders. Ms. Collazo.
Thank you. The home rule issue, the preemption issue is very important. We've seen a trend over the years that the state has been usurping the power of localities. and that is not okay. The only instance in which the state should be doing that is if it's related to the rights of people in the community. Otherwise, we should allow our localities, the city of Hialeah, the town of Miami Lakes, unincorporated Dade, to take decisions that their residents in those specific areas feel are important for them. As far as the bridges issue, it's a really difficult issue. You know, as a state representative, we have to look at the whole district, not just one municipality or the other. And I think that, you know, in saying that, I would also say that we don't want to try to fix a problem and then create another problem. So, you know, this is something that there was an agreement between the city of Hialeah and the town of Miami Lakes. That's something that they're gonna have to work out. If I need to put forth an appropriations bill to assist in that, if that's something that the localities want, I would absolutely love to work with both sides on achieving that. There is an issue with that area in Representative Polo's district, a lack of accessibility. We certainly don't want to increase traffic in Miami Lakes, and that will turn into a traffic nightmare and a safety issue. But there are certain things that we can also do to alleviate traffic that are not related to the bridges. For example, putting an on and off ramp from 170th onto the turnpike. That could be a solution. With the bridges, perhaps allowing one-way traffic during certain times of the day and changing it later on in the day. So there are fixes, but certainly it needs to be done in a spirit of collaboration and working with our localities for them to make the best decision for everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Collazo. Mr. Rizzo?
Thank you. So I do believe that local home rule is something that should be afforded local municipalities, and the state should, in very few cases, reach in its long arm to try to circumvent that. Now, with that said, I believe the role of the state representative, and God willing, I will be there, is to be a consensus builder, to work with both municipalities on a workable option. Now, what does that mean? That does mean, perhaps, working with the federal authorities to make off-ramps off of I-75 to 170th, which are far more, probably more, less expensive, probably much more affordable than a ramp from 170th going 18 blocks to the turnpike, which Ms. Collazo just mentioned. That, I believe, is probably the best answer for this situation. Yes, people do need egress out of that area of West Hialeah and ingress because it is a danger to them. It's also a danger that, that local first responders can't get in and can't get out fast enough. So it is an issue that must be addressed, and I plan to work with local leaders to make sure that it is addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Representative Polo, please.
So here's the magic of these debates and forums is when we are in front of our communities, we, and I throw myself in there, of anyone that has wanted to serve, just have all the great answers and the right answers. We're gonna stand on here representing parts of Miami-Dade County and say that we are all in favor of home rule. And yet, for the last 2 years in session, I have had to fight members of our own delegation in order to protect home rule. So as we talk about why is it important for us to respect the autonomy of local governments in our area, we can start with one of the most worrisome topics that I've had to debate in the last 2 years, which is our children's safety in schools. If not for the autonomy of our local government, Miami-Dade County Public Schools and Broward would not have had the opportunity to deny the law that would have armed teachers. That is the kind of importance that local government can help. See, because I serve with folks from Northern Florida, I serve with folks from Ocala that do not have the same challenges that we have here in Miami-Dade County. Notwithstanding that we also represent and live in a county that is a donor county, a county that pays far more into the state's budget than we will ever see back. So that is the reason why home rule is so important. It is not just a talking point, but we have to make sure that we are electing folks that don't just say it to you here on this stage, but are willing to stand up to their leadership. They're willing to stand up to other portions of the state's representation and take the votes that we need them to take here in Miami-Dade County. As far as the bridges, both Ms. Collazo and Mr. Rizzo mentioned the challenges and the reason why it needs to be addressed. We do have an area just west of I-75, beautiful homes that were constructed and yet followed what seems to be the Miami-Dade County motto the last few decades: build it and we'll figure it out later. We have folks that are closed out from their communities, do not have access to even their children's schools without entering some of the most congested areas of traffic. However, as a state legislator, as much as our position may be great for fodder on social media, as state reps, we actually have no jurisdiction over those bridges. Do I believe it's important for us to be able to build consensus between the city of Hialeah and the town of Miami Lakes? Absolutely. But we must also be willing to have tough conversations with both of those areas so that we are able to mitigate the risks, we are able to choose the best option, and that we continuously, as we move forward, always look for the solution that will have the greater good. It is a complicated issue, one that they have taken quite some time fighting and and have opened up several other topics between the city of Hialeah and the town of Miami Lakes. So I encourage our local elected officials to continue to try to work it out and not necessarily take on these battles on social media or in the radio, but actually get behind closed doors and really trying to find a solution for it.
Thank you, Mr. Fabriz.
With regard to the bridges, again, I think we're here at a state representative's debate, and we're looking at what function can the state representative provide to help. And Ms. Pohl is correct. It's not within our jurisdiction. There's no question about that. However, what is within our purview, what is within our control is the ability to work to build consensus, to go and work to reach out to these community leaders, to go actually speak to Mayor Carlos Hernandez, to speak to Mayor Manny Cid, to speak to Mayor Yosette de la Cruz, and to work with them to try to get some of these problems resolved, to try to be the mediator between some of these folks, rather than actually launching attacks at them. So I would see my role as more of the mediator and negotiator with that perspective. As far as actual solutions, I believe that one of the best solutions that we could hope for would be an on and off ramp from I-75 to 170th. I think I've spoken to many people in that West Hialeah area that's affectionately known as the Annex. And in that area, their concern has to do with safety, access to fire, access to police. And they need that in that area. They need access, they need ingress, egress. However, we can't have this truck through traffic coming through Miami Lakes and disturbing what's going on in Miami Lakes. So to create that balance, I believe the best solution is working as a negotiator with FDOT to try to work to get that on-ramp, off-ramp done on I-75. I think there's other avenues as well, as far as access to the turnpike and certain other traffic alleviating devices that we can do at 138th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fabriz. I'd like to ask the,
I'm sorry, I wanted to just chime
Yes,
in if
go
I
ahead,
could,
please.
because Mr. Rizzo referred to me in his comment, and I know that there's some rules here regarding our ability to chime in. Is that correct?
you okay with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, please.
Well, I just wanted to comment, regarding the solutions we were considering for the bridge issue. We may not have the perfect solution for this very complicated problem. We may not know what those solutions are gonna end up looking like. And so, of course, we all have been saying, yes, let's build consensus. But we also have to look at the history of the problems in our area and hold people accountable. And, referring to the issue of, this community and the traffic, we have to look at zoning issues. What are some of the development issues that have gone on, decisions that have been made perhaps haphazardly, without thinking about the impact on local traffic patterns. I wanted to just state that because we talk a lot about, our experiences. Let's look at the quality of those experiences and see, instead of just thinking about what are the solutions, let's look at, how did these problems arise so they don't continue to compound
Ms.
themselves.
Collazo, you're referring to the fact that Mr. Rizzo has served on the community council?
I am referring to the facts,
And
and
are
I
you
wanted to
suggesting
address
that he's participated in zoning decisions that have been detrimental to the district?
Perhaps, I don't know his record on that community council, but, it is something that we should.
Shouldn't you be prepared to know his record if you're going to make that allegation?
Well, I wanted to leave it to Mr. Rizzo to tell us,
Mr.
was
Rizzo,
he
do
able
you have a
to
response?
participate in zoning decisions?
Sure. My response is that, first and foremost, with every decision that I've ever made on the 5 years that I've served on the community council, is how does this impact my community? Traffic concerns are paramount within this area. And so, yes, with every single decision that I have made, we have done that. With that, blasting, since we've talked about it, since it's brought up, that has also been one that is at the forefront, and one at which I have blocked what I could because I believed that it was in the wrong decision. It was in the wrong vein to allow for certain things. So yes, definitely when it comes to traffic, Northwest Miami-Dade is impacted severely by traffic.
Mr. Rizzo, you just mentioned blasting. A
Yes, sir.
moment ago, you said that, quote, the state's long arm of legislation should be used seldomly.
Yes, sir.
And that you believe in home rule. For those of us who live in Northwest Dade, we know that the real issue here, let's get to the bottom of it, with blasting, is that there's no local control over the issue.
Yes,
And
sir.
as long as Tallahassee has control over blasting, the people of Northwest Dade will not see the relief they need. Would you be willing to commit here in front of the audience and the members, voters of your district, to buck your own leadership and support and advocate for a bill that would return control of blasting to Miami-Dade County?
So
Yes or no?
Well, it's more than a yes or no.
No, it is. I'm a very specific question.
Well, I'd like
Would-
to ask you with, I'd like to answer you with more specifics. So, yes, I would be in favor of a bill. However, I don't currently enjoy any of my own leadership because I'm not there yet. So when you refer to current leadership, my current leadership, I have none, or we have none, except for Ms. Polo, who is here on the stage. So,
By
yes,
leadership, Mr. Rizzo, I'm referring to the legislative leadership in Tallahassee.
Thank you.
Which is currently and presumably will continue to be in the hands of Republicans. Will
Thank you.
you sponsor and advocate a bill that will return local control over blasting matters to Miami-Dade County? Mr. Fabricio, would you sponsor that bill?
I already said I would.
Right.
And is that a commitment to the voters?
100% commitment.
And Mayor Pinellas.
Without a doubt.
And Mr. Fabricio, if I might, just to finish, since I was asked a question, I would definitely love to co-sponsor and support a bill and advocate for a bill when leaders like Tom Fabricio do file that bill, because I do believe that that certainly is under local control. However, and you as mayor of Miami-Dade must know that there are many other governmental agencies that do have their hand into the mining situation. For example, the federal authorities, because that is also under federal auspices as well. So again, it's all about building consensus, being a leader in the state, working with local authorities. To answer your question in brief, yes, I would. Or to restate my answer, yes, I would.
Ms. Polo, Ms. Coyase, very briefly, please. I don't
Yes.
want to take
No,
Frank's
thank
time.
you.
Very
So-
briefly.
I'll add this, is Mr. Rizzo just said that he would co-sponsor a bill if Mr. Fabricio put forth the bill. We have had bills put forth by Representative Avila, Senator Manny Diaz Jr., Representative Ana Maria Rodriguez. So the legislation being sponsored is not an issue. Representative Ana Maria Rodriguez in the first session put forth a blasting bill, met with residents, many of which are watching us right now, had no clue what the blasting damages were in District 105, which is her district. And let's remind folks, it's not just Northwest Dade. Southwest Broward and the area of Miramar is actually ground zero for much of the damage. They are closest to the county line. But the best part of what you've heard up here is this phrase of building consensus. We have had the most powerful man in the Florida House of Representatives from our community And
Ms.
he
Polo,
has been unable to
Ms. Polo,
build consensus?
We've already heard that. Ms. Collazo?
Yes, okay, just to clarify, I'm answering the question if I would sponsor a bill for local control?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Whatever it takes to solve this problem, this decades-long problem where people are absolutely desperate to get solutions, we have to move on it, whatever it takes.
Sorry, Frank.
No, thank you, good. Spice things up, I like it. Thank you. Let's transition over to the issue of, big that encompasses a lot of areas, economic development, impact on all businesses, particularly small business during this time, and how components or ideas such as raising the minimum wage or imposing certain additional regulations on businesses may affect economic development. And tied into that is a specific question that was asked, which is the issue of the American Dream Mall, the mall that seems to be on hold now, and how that would significantly affect additional economic development for the area in general. Let's start with Mr. Fabricio, please.
Restate the question, please.
Yeah, in general, in big terms, the issue of economic development, and in particular during these tough times, what would you do in Tallahassee to promote economic development? And how would some ideas that have been presented, such as raising minimum wage, impact economic development, in particular small business? And would the Dream Mall, American Dream Mall, is that something worth pushing that you could stimulate to help economic development in the area?
Okay, there's a couple of things there. So let's start with economic development with regard to the COVID pandemic and what's going on in the community now. I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to get Floridians back to work safely. So we need to make sure that that employers are able to get employees back in and that we can get the economy going again. As far as some of the things that we can do in Tallahassee, or hopefully we can do in Tallahassee to get things going, there are bridge loans that were issued. I think there are certain businesses that may qualify for bridge loan forgiveness, or should qualify for bridge loan forgiveness, so that they aren't overburdened and they can go forward, they create jobs, and they could help folks in the community get going again. I believe that some unemployment benefits need to be extended to provide more relief to folks who are in need and unable to go back to work for those special circumstances. And we need to work to get that done. But there are other solutions as well. There are other small business organizations like the Beacon Council and several other organizations that can also help some of these small businesses pivot in light of the changes that we've all gone through now with COVID. I think certain things such as telehealth and telemedicine, which was provided for now during COVID, I think that needs to be made permanent. I know many people, I've knocked on many doors where there are folks that can't get to their doctors, or it's hard for them to get to their doctors, and that telehealth really does help them out. And we need to ensure that that is there permanently for them. So things like this, we need to make sure that there is sufficient PPE available for folks in case there is another outbreak. We need to make sure that the supply chains are ready to go to be able to provide paper goods like we saw a shortage of last time. And I don't expect that we will have those shortages if, God forbid, we have another terrible outbreak. The next question I think you asked had to do with the American Dream Mall.
Correct.
The American Dream Mall, it's been on pause for some time, and people are teetering on both sides of it. On the one hand, it's a job creator in the area, but on the other hand, it's going to create congestion and more traffic. And we really need to figure out whether we're really going to want to have that additional traffic in the area.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Bo?
Thank you, Mr. Bolaños. So I guess there is a two-part question. So we somehow moved over to COVID response. Again, what I really want viewers and the residents of our community to understand is that it's one thing for us to say what we're going to do or what we hope gets done, and it's another thing of what happens in Tallahassee. On March 13th, which was scheduled to be the last day of this past session, The states were basically on the verge of shutting down at that point. We knew that within a few months, we were going to have to call a special session and go back to Tallahassee to address the issues that we saw coming. We knew it was going to affect lives. We knew that our health system was going to be overburdened. We knew that business owners were going to be terribly affected. We call for a special session, and every Republican in the Florida House voted against the special session, which is actually our job. Our job is to legislate. It is not to come home and pose in photo opportunities. It is to legislate. We could have been addressing budget concerns, not just during special session, but during regular session, when we put forth for 2 years a budget that gives continuous and nonstop corporate tax breaks, but does not reach out to the small business community, Mr. Bolaños, that you just asked me about. It is time that our government stop being so reactive. We are now talking about supporting small businesses. We should have been doing that, especially that in our area, small business is the lifeline of our communities. Our mothers, our fathers, our neighbors are small business owners. Why is it that this administration and those that have supported it year after year continue to put forth a budget that gives corporations tax breaks and favors them, yet we are not advocating for the homeowners, business owners in our community? Now, as far as, you also mentioned minimum wage. That's going to be something that's now on the ballot. I believe that is one of the most sacred ways that we can figure out what the pulse and the needs of our community are, is to have folks from our community actually be able to vote on an amendment like that. Unfortunately, I also serve in a legislature that will take the amendments that residents vote for and create a mandate, such as Amendment 4 that happened in 2018, and then spend 2 years and millions of dollars fighting against the will of the voters. And so then we also talked about the Dream Mall, Nightmare Mall, as many of my neighbors call it. That is also a local issue. That is an issue that has been decided through county commissioners, many of which believe they did such a great job in making those decisions that they are now running for other offices. Those are the folks that continue to make decisions that affect our livelihoods and are never held accountable. And so that mall, it is the continuous motto of that you'll build it and we'll figure it out later. We currently have traffic issues. We currently have the concern of folks not being able to pay rent or pay their mortgage. Those are the things that we need to be taking action on right now and not increasing the issues of our residents.
Thank you. Mr. Fabricio, would like to respond?
Yeah, sure. It's a little draining sometimes, but Ms. Polo talks about all these problems of things that were tried but weren't able to get done. And it's unfortunate that they weren't able to get done. Other legislators were able to get things done in Tallahassee. Other Democrats were able to get things done in Tallahassee. And we need a representative in Tallahassee who will go and set aside personal issues and go and get things done and actually work to build a consensus, not just point fingers and say, look, because of so-and-so, we couldn't get anything done. Thank you so much.
I will request some time since you
Yes,
changed the subject on
briefly,
that one.
please.
Yes,
Briefly.
absolutely. Blaming fingers and pointing fingers, absolutely. I will absolutely do that. I've been in office for less than 2 years. We have had representation the same for 20 years. We have had recycled lifelong politicians that move from one position and run for another one. And they will continue to do so because we have offered them a sense of loyalty that they have not offered us. My opponent is going to talk about that I'm pointing fingers. Guess what happened before 2 years ago? We never pointed fingers. We had to just take it. So I will point fingers. I will call them out. I will help flip other seats so that Northwest Miami-Dade does have a seat at the table and is spoken to and treated with respect.
It sounds, Mr. Fabricio, that Representative Polo says that she's a voice, a dissenting voice. It sounds like you're saying, does that really get things done? Would you like to add something briefly to that?
You're stealing my thunder. That's precisely the issue. I've spoken to thousands of people in the district who feel that they are unrepresented now because things don't get done. And exactly her words here in front of you today is that she views her role as that of an advocate, to point fingers. And that's not getting things done. Not one appropriation bill filed by her to benefit the district in 2 years. Thank you so much.
But Frank, the question though is it to get things done, or is it just to do what leadership tells you to do? Because that's the difference. A lot of people feel frustrated that, you know, whoever the whip is, that's who you have to answer to. And Mr. Rizzo, the question goes to you. It's about independence. Are you going to truly be an independent voice to your Republican whip, or are you just going to do what you're told?
I'd like to answer.
If I may interject, that's what we sometimes hear, that the whip kind of stands up and goes this or this, right?
I'd like to answer that.
Go ahead. That's why I asked the question.
Right, no, the point being specifically that there have been issues raised by minority members. For example, Nick Duran, he's a member of the minority. He gets his bills passed. Anna Escamani, up in 47, she's a member of the minority. She was a first-term representative. She got bills passed. She filed appropriations bills. Ms. Polo didn't even file an appropriations bill for our community. She didn't ask for 1 penny of our tax dollars for us here in Miami Lakes or anywhere in District 103.
When the Miami Lakes delegation visited Tallahassee, they didn't even ask her for a meeting.
It's not
They
only
did, they just canceled.
It's not only Miami Lakes. It's
Well,
Hialeah Gardens. It's Hialeah. Miami-Dade County with the county government. There are other sections other than Miami Lakes, and I understand that there were text messages and somebody said they didn't want to text back and forth, and I don't want to get into that pettiness. I wasn't involved in that, but my job as a state representative would be to build consensus and get things done for the
But
community.
we also want to know about independence, and I want to get back to that issue. I mean, there are things that are important for Northwest Dade. We talked about blasting, filing a bill to return local control to the local government. Those are the things that voters will measure you on, Mr. Rizzo, and that's what we want to hear. Are you truly going to be an independent voice, or are you going to be you're going to be at the very bottom of the totem pole, right? You're looking to replace arguably the most powerful person right now in the legislature. That seat will go. You will be at the very bottom in the Republican lineup. Are you just gonna, are you gonna give up your two policy priorities in return for leadership positions, or are you gonna speak up for your district?
Well, I'm beholden to the people of 110 if they find it in their hearts and in their minds to elect me and send me as their representative. Those are the people that I have loyalty to. Those are the people that I will represent. So will I be an independent voice? Absolutely. Am I a Republican? Absolutely, and I'm unashamed at saying that. However, yes, I need to represent. Whoever we send needs to represent the people of 110, and that's who the loyalty belongs to.
Now, to Mr. Fabricio's point, and this is to Ms. Polo and Ms. Collazo, wouldn't it be better for the voters in your districts to elect a Republican because they are the majority? Let's be frank, they are the majority, and many voters will say, well, you know what? I think it's better to send another Republican because that individual will have a greater voice in this decision-making process. It's only 60 days. And if you haven't cooked the stew before the session starts, you ain't gonna get nothing done. So what would you tell voters in your districts that say, you know what, let's send a Republican because they're gonna get something done? Ms. Collazo?
Yes.
Go ahead.
And after that comment, we'll move on to closing statements. Ms. Collazo.
Yeah, I really do want to stay away from this, Republican, Democrat. We've seen many effective representatives on both sides. It's really about what the person is going to do for the community, what is the true intent to serve the community without being aligned with the wrong interests, without, seeking political power at the expense of our district. I certainly feel that I am not encumbered by any, requirement to align with a special interest, to, constantly agree with my party or constantly disagree with the Republican Party. I am here for the community and to get the hard work done. What we really need to be looking at, I think, is people want to see if our representatives during the campaign trail our candidates during the campaign trail are making the right choices for their campaign, are conducting themselves in the way that they will be legislating. I think that's an important issue. And I do want to bring up, now that I have the opportunity to do so, you know, let's follow the money again. Let's see what the money tells us about who we're aligning ourselves with. I have not accepted any donations from mind blasting interests, but I cannot say the same of my opponent.
And with all due respect, I know we want to move on to the closings, but it's very important that my opponent spoke about appropriations, and Mayor Pinellas asked a very fair question. Is it better for the residents to vote for a Republican? So let's talk about what Republicans did for the town of Miami Lakes, since they were gracious enough to host this in the last 2 years. In 2019, they put forth appropriations for Royal Oaks drainage, improvements to Miami Lake Business Park Northeast and Miami Lakes Business Park Southeast. You know what happened to those appropriations, Mayor Pinellas? They died or were vetoed by the governor. In 2020, the town of Miami Lakes, with Representative Avila and Senator Diaz's help, put forth these appropriations that my opponent believes he knows so much about, put forth appropriations for the East Pedestrian Project in Miami Lakes, Royal Oaks drainage, Loch Lomond drainage, and a multi-purpose senior community center build-out, all vetoed by the governor. Let's put that on a mailer. That is what Republican leadership has gotten our community. So my answer to you, Mr. Pinellas, is it better for our residents to vote for a Republican? Not if it's going to be a yes man, because representatives and Republican representatives that have put forth, that receive the respect to meet with the town to put forth an appropriations, put forth those appropriations, and they either died in committee or were vetoed by the Republican governor.
So Frank, it's interesting because, and maybe this could just be a very quick yes or no response. A lot of this bickering may end if Amendment 3 is passed. And I think the folks who are watching us today should know that Amendment 3, called All Voters, would basically say that independents, people who are neither registered as Democrats or Republicans, would have the right to vote in your primaries. All legislative candidates would be together, right, on the same ballot. You would have the D and the R next to you, but any voter, including independents, can vote for any one of the candidates they choose. And the top two vote getters, regardless of what party they belong to, would go to a runoff. Some feel that that's a very fair way of allowing more moderation in the political debate. I think it would be interesting, Frank, for the voters of the districts to know, yes or no, do you recommend a yes or a no vote on Amendment 3 on November 3rd? Mr. Rizzo.
I recommend a no vote.
Ms. Collazo.
I would recommend a yes.
Ms. Polo.
You know, I'm not sure yet.
You're not sure.
Because a nonpartisan
Yes or no, please. If you're not sure,
nonpartisan
if you're not-
county
if you're not sure,
mayor's
Ms.
race would not, unfortunately,
Miss, I
did not
understand.
get us the best two candidates.
Okay, well, but yes or no, you're not sure. Mr. Fabricio.
No. I'd like to respond to her last
Let's
statement.
move on, and if you feel compelled, add that to your closing statement.
I will.
I'd like to
Thank you.
introduce the closing statement section now, as we need to move on to the other things, and as always happens, time flies when you're having fun, so, and I do want to say that I am very favorably impressed at the intelligence, at the preparation that all of you have shown, and I want to thank you on behalf of all the residents of the areas you seek to represent for stepping forward and taking this important step in public service that always takes time away from family, business, and other components. Mr. Fabricio, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody. Thank you to Ms. Polo and all the other candidates. My name is Tom Fabricio, and again, I've been working very hard to earn your vote, to be your representative. At this point, again, we've been campaigning since August of last year, knocked on close to 19,000 doors so far. We will exceed 20,000 doors engaged. I want to be your representative. I want to represent you in Tallahassee. I am the candidate for District 103 who will reach across the aisle. I am the candidate, the only candidate for running for District 103 that's endorsed by both the Police Benevolent Association and the Fraternal Order of Police. These are in particular endorsements that generally don't go when they're to a candidate running against an incumbent. But they found that my background and my support for the police is important in supporting the community and going forward in light of the current times that we're in. I want to mention something that Ms. Polo just touched on. She mentioned that a lot of these appropriations that were filed on behalf of the town of Miami Lakes were ultimately vetoed. And she says that in light of the fact that, look, they weren't even important. They didn't get passed through. Being a Republican isn't important. And this isn't really about being a Republican or being a Democrat, but about those particular appropriations and what an appropriation means. This is your tax dollars, ladies and gentlemen, your tax dollars that you sent to Tallahassee. And your state representative should represent you and should advocate for you to use your tax dollars to benefit you and your district and your area, your community. Ms. Polo is saying that these tax dollars that were requested by other representatives for Miami Lakes and for the other communities in the district were vetoed by the governor. That's true, no question. But she's saying, look, it's not even important. She didn't even ask for 1 penny for the district, not 1 penny. And I think that's very telling. You want a representative who will be there for you. I will work to be there for you. I will build consensus locally. I will build consensus in Tallahassee to get things done. I will work on repealing the blasting legislation to be able to reduce the blasting levels in here in West Dade County, and I will work with the county government, and the county government officials to fix the problem as best as we can. I want to be your representative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fabricio. Representative Polo?
Yes. Well, thank you again to everyone that has participated in this process, especially those that are watching from home. As promised, you heard about all the things they think I am. You've heard about what I've done and not done. You've heard a failed attempt to blame me for everything. You saw how my passion, my fight, and my dedication is used against me. He has now put words in my mouth. Anyone that has known me for more than 5 minutes knows that I do not need even a state senator to speak on behalf of me. I speak for myself and my community. But the most important thing that you heard today is that unlike my opponent, I in fact have the courage to take it on. Progress, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, does not happen at the speed that we want or need it to. But it does happen when we are willing to take on the big fights, when we stand up to bullies, and when we are willing to do all of that for the right reasons. I know that this election is not about me. It's about what I represent. I represent real people demanding a seat at the table. I represent a change in the politics that have controlled our area for decades. See, I wasn't groomed for this. I am not privy to their playbook. I do not play by their rules, and they don't like it. We have had a long list of recycled politicians at every level of government that have sold out our communities, time and time again with no accountability. They move from office to office knowing they will win in our area because many of you have afforded them a loyalty that has not been reciprocated. This election is about changing that. It is about us. I'll tell you what it's also about. It's about my son, CJ. He will one day learn that his mother unapologetically fought for the community she was raised in and chose to raise him in. He will someday understand that his mother did not turn a blind eye or became a yes woman to the greed and pettiness that has controlled our area for decades. He will learn that true leadership is the willingness to fight for those that need us the most. He will also learn that his mother did not do this alone. She was joined by brave individuals who refused to be blamed and victimized by those in power. I ask that you vote for me, Cindy Polo, because I am nowhere being done fighting for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to closing statements for the representatives of District 110. District 110 is in a very unique situation to have two educators, and we didn't get an opportunity to dive deep into one of my favorite subjects, education. So if you feel so compelled, if you can add anything in that regards in your closing statements, I think it would be useful. I know in particular, in reading your campaign websites, that there may be some differences of opinion as it relates to maybe perhaps opening of schools, at a particular time, perhaps as it relates to school choice and those components. So with that, please, Ms. Collazo.
Well, I don't know if we want to have Mr. Rizzo give his closing statement first, since I opened first, just to
Yes,
follow
please,
the
that's
rules.
fine, that's fine. I'm okay
Ladies
with that.
first. You called it, you're the
All
moderator.
right, go ahead, Ms. Collazo, please.
Okay. Well, there are so many topics that we haven't discussed, and I'm gonna try to, see if I can touch upon many of them. But, I'm very driven by my sense of duty and obligation to the values that have been a part of my life. My parents instilled very strong values in me. And I have a great sense of duty and obligation to our families, my students. And so, I would be absolutely honored to be able to work the hardest that I ever have to be your state representative, because we are in challenging times and we need our legislators to work hard in Tallahassee. We're gonna be dealing with a budget crisis. We're gonna have to make some tough choices across the board. And we need to remember our values and our priorities: education, our health, our economy. Speaking to education, that has been my life's passion, and that is something that I hope to pursue as your state representative, make big impacts in education for the betterment of our community. I am someone that supports family choice when it comes to schools. I've worked in charter schools, traditional public schools, and even most recently in a tribal school. And I understand that families need to have choices. And if they feel that a school is not serving their child, they should be able to take their child to a school that they believe will do their job. But we also have to make sure that schools that we are entrusting with our taxpayer dollars are following the rules. We have to make sure that there is accountability for all of our schools. And we have to make sure that there isn't a conflict of interest, that people that are serving or working or consulting for schools are also making legislative decisions that are impacting those schools and their bottom line. And that's something that we've been seeing for years. I'll end by saying that, as I've been going around the district and speaking with people, I've met many people that are concerned with some issues that we haven't talked at all about today. People are concerned with the cost of living in our community, especially in the area of Hialeah. People are concerned that their retirement is not gonna last them because of that cost of living. They're concerned with increases in insurance rates, constant increases, automobile insurance, homeowners insurance. These are the issues that people in our community are talking about, in addition to mind blasting, traffic, education, and healthcare. Healthcare has never been more important than it is now, and we have to make sure that we're getting resources to our community during this pandemic so that we avoid, unavoidable tragedies that we've seen. Hopefully no one here personally knows someone that has passed from the pandemic. I've met some people in our community that have been through tragedy after tragedy. And personally, I know people as well that have been impacted in many ways and have lost loved ones. So now is the time to get to work, whatever it takes to advocate for our community, and that is what I have to offer. So I would be absolutely honored to have the opportunity to do that for us in Tallahassee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collazo. Mr. Rizzo, your closing
Thank you
statement,
very much.
please.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone and thank the town of Miami Lakes, the moderators, Miami-Dade Community College for hosting us. Thank you to the other ladies and gentlemen that are on the stage. And to my opponent, this takes a lot, and I certainly have a respect for teachers as being one myself and knowing what they go through day to day. What do I want to do? You touched upon education. We need to improve on what we do and follow the trend in increasing per student allocations. We need to guard and expand school choice. And by that, I mean all school choice, and that includes within the public school systems, absolutely. And they've had it for quite some time, and I see how it's worked. I've been part of that. I've been one of the, at my schools, innovators for school choice when I worked in the public school system and outside the public school system. So I believe in that wholeheartedly. I want to see how we can bring back the district cost differential into the the way that the state of Florida funds students, so that a student in Miami-Dade County, where it's much more expensive to live, gets a little bit more than perhaps one of the counties in Central Florida, or perhaps even in the Panhandle, where the cost of living is less expensive. So those are some of the things that I'd like to touch on, and I think we could speak for hours on end about education. Once again, I think this election comes down to leadership. This election, and you said it, you know, and it was mentioned before by Mayor Pinellas. Both my opponent and myself are seeking to follow in the footsteps of this current Speaker of the House, and that's quite a powerful position, as you said. And my opponent mentioned something about special interests, and that is quite interesting. Over 85% of her current campaign funds have come from outside the state of Florida. I don't know if anyone really knows what those special interests may be, but if that's a special interest, if I've ever heard of a special interest, that's certainly a collective one at best. The other thing is experience. Once again, experience. I've been accused of taking monies from special interest in the blasting fields. Well, I haven't taken any, as I know. I believe that she's speaking about someone that is a lobbyist for several different industries and organizations who gave me personal checks. That is totally legal. And the part about experience is what I mean. This is about building consensus, because that very same person that I've been accused of taking money from, that is a special interest in the blasting field, also represents the Children's Trust, Camilla's House, the University of Miami, Miami-Dade College, Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and Lauren's Kids, which I urge everyone to look at, which is an organization that educates against sexual abuse of minors. And so this is the kind of thing that you have to deal with in Tallahassee. You have to sift through this nonsense and look at what the real questions are and where the answers and solutions lie. It's about sifting through and knowing how to navigate these things, and it comes from lifetimes of experience and leadership abilities, which, again, I welcome my opponent finally jumping in the foray of public service. I welcome her. Thank you for joining in, and I laud you know, your willingness to do so. But anyway, enough about the attacks and the special interests. Again, I humbly ask for the voters of 110 to trust in me.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. It's been a privilege to host this debate. Again, thank you to all the participants, and wish you much luck and success in representing both the people of Districts 103 and 110. Also, thank you, Mayor Pinellas. Thank you for jumping in, for spicing things up, and for your reflections as well. And with that, this legislative part of today's debate is ended. Thank you so much.
Good job,
Thank
guys.
you.
Good job.
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Melissa Caballero Alton. I am the president of the Miami Lakes Bar Association. And today I want to thank you so much for joining us, whether you're here with us or joining us virtually. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us for today's debate. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to a few people who made this possible. A lot of people, actually. The Town of Miami Lakes and their wonderful staff for putting this together, along with the Economic Development Committee, the Town's Council, Miami-Dade College North Campus, which is where we are today. They've put in so much hard work to make this possible. So we thank all of you, and of course, the candidates who are here today, who you'll be hearing from soon, as well as our moderators. Momentarily, we'll begin the debate for the Town of Miami Lakes municipal elections. Before we begin, I'd like to first bring out and introduce the candidates. For Council Seat 1, we have Mr. Tony Fernandez. Thank you, Tony. And for Council Seat 1 as well, we have Mr. Naib Hassan. Thank you. For Council Seat 3, today we have Miss Marilyn Ruano. And also for Council Seat 3, we have Mr. Ray Garcia. Thank you. Now, the moderator for today's debate is Mr. Alex Pinellas. As the former chief executive of one of the most diverse communities and fourth largest county in the United States, Alex Pinellas is recognized as a reformer and consensus builder. At the age of 25, he launched his public service career when elected councilman in the city of Hialeah. And in 1990, he was the youngest person ever elected to the Miami-Dade Board of County Commissioners. 6 years later, he was elected Miami-Dade's first executive mayor. Mr. Pinellas, along with his wife and 3 children, are proud residents of the Town of Miami Lakes, where he has maintained his law and business office since leaving public service in 2004. We are fortunate today to have Mr. Pinellas moderate the Town Council Debate Forum now for the 3rd consecutive election cycle. So without further ado, thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Mr. Pinellas. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Melissa, so much. My appreciation as well to the Bar Association, to the town, to Miami-Dade College for helping organize today's forum. And I want to take a moment to thank each of you for your service, or in some cases, future service to your community. It takes a lot. Having been there myself many times, I know the immense sacrifices that you make in terms of your family, your businesses, so you are each to be commended. And of course, I wish you all much success, not only today during this forum, but obviously on November 3rd, as you seek to represent the town of Miami Lakes. So I want to start off by a couple of disclosures. I think each of you have been made aware that my political committee has made a contribution to Ms. Ruano's campaign. My committee has also made a contribution to a political action committee that is involved in this election. I believe it's called Community Voices. And I believe all of you have been made aware of those disclosures and are okay with me proceeding as moderator, correct?
Correct.
Very good. So let me lay out a little bit of the guidelines. You know, I want today's debate to be a little bit less formal than the one we just had. I really want it to be an open discussion between all 4 of you. So I'm not necessarily going to call you in order. I may skip from one race to another, or I may just stay on one candidate for a while and keep asking follow-up questions. Let's have a conversation. There's a lot of issues to discuss. As a Miami Laker, there's a lot of things that I'm concerned about. So if you could keep your answers very brief, that would be great. And if you don't take it personally if I interrupt you and ask you to move on or move on to another candidate. Because, again, there's a lot of issues that we want to get to. Having said that, you know, I will strive to make sure everyone gets equal time.
Thank you.
We have about an hour or so for this forum, so we have a lot to cover. By the way, I prepared my own questions, although I did receive a few from concerned citizens, and I'm going to try to mix those into the forum today. The research, for the most part, is mine. The town did help me with some research matters, but the questions are all mine, okay? So having said that, I thought let's just take a really quick moment, very quick, maybe 30 seconds to introduce yourself. Let voters in the town know why they should vote for you, and we'll start with the incumbent councilwoman, Ms. Ruano.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pinellas, and thank you to Miami-Dade College for hosting this forum. It's a beautiful setting, and we really appreciate it. My name is Marilyn Ruano. I have been your councilwoman for the past 3 years. I have been an advocate in this community for over 15 years. I started passionate about education. I started as a parent advocate and have moved along in the ranks, advocating for all sorts of issues that have to do with the town of Miami Lakes. I've been attending council meetings for over a decade, voicing my opinion, standing at the podium, holding my elected officials accountable as residents do to me today, and it would be an honor to continue to serve you for another 4 years.
Ms. Ruano, the pressing question on the minds of many voters is why didn't you run for mayor? There was some early discussion in this campaign, and in fact, Mr. Garcia thought that you were running for mayor. That's why he filed for the seat. Did you mislead the voters?
Yes, sir. I did not mislead the voters. There was a lot of talk about that. There was residents reaching out to me, asking me to run. Residents want a change in Miami Lakes. They were not happy with the direction that the town was going in, and they saw me as that solution to the problem.
Mr. Garcia, did Ms. Ruano mislead the voters?
No, I don't think she misled the voters, no.
Why are you running for town council?
Well, first of all, because I want to serve. I love the town. And before I get into that, I just want to say hi to Mommy and Poppy, all my kids, Roman, Ryan, Raymond, Gavin, Carolina, and Susie, my sister. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Miami-Dade North. I want to thank the Bar Association of Miami Lakes, and of course the Economic Development Committee for putting this together. And of course, you. Thank you for being here, and all the candidates. No, she had a tough decision, and she decided not to run for mayor. However, I thought she was. I mean, the impression she was, and that's why I selected C3. I thought it was going to be open, and that was the reason, basically, I selected that seat.
Now, you've only lived in the town for 5 years. What would you tell voters in the town that say, Ms. Ruano is an established individual in the town. Mm-hmm. She's served the community. Are you a Johnny-come-lately?
No, I have deep ties to the town. My sister,
like?
Well, my sister's lived here for 20 years.
That's your sister. She's not running for council.
Oh, I know. But my family's lived here. I've been a coach and a parent coach in Optimist Park for more than 10 years. I was director of Parks and Recreation for a local municipality, Hialeah Gardens. I worked very closely with Barbara Goldman, donating thousands of dollars to them and working with them in our events. Their kids volunteered at our events. So I have a lot of, and as a kid, honestly, I love the town. I grew up in Hialeah, but I always wanted to live here.
Mr. Fernandez, you're relatively new to town. Why should voters pick you over Mr. Hassan, who has a long-established record in Miami Lakes?
So I believe that my record of service speaks for itself.
Like
I've chaired the Youth Activities Task Force for the last 3 years. I think in the 5 years that I've lived in the town, I have done as much or more for the town than many people have in their entire life.
Have you done more than Mr. Hassan?
Absolutely. Mr. Hassan was not active in local politics until he ran for office during the 2016 cycle. And that's more or less about the time of the beginning of my service.
Mr. Hassan, actually, I do recall a debate that I moderated 4 years ago. It did seem that you were a little skinny on the service side of this. What have you done in your time in the town of Miami Lakes to deserve our vote?
Well, I got involved, and thank you, Mr. Pinellas, for moderating this. Thank you, town of Miami Lakes. Thank you, Miami-Dade College. And thank you for all the individuals that put this together. I became involved with the town of Miami Lakes in 2016 because absolutely I didn't like the direction of the town. We had a direction that was going to ill will. And that's when I first became involved because I could not see my community going down the way that it was. 4 years ago, I was appointed to the Veterans Committee, collected with various individuals which I hold the highest esteem for. I became chair of the Veterans Committee. An individual that did not serve in the military was placed by veterans to chair the Veterans Committee. Since then, we've done military tribute banners, we've done the Jingle Bell Jog 5K, and most importantly, The Jingle Bell Jog 5K is one of the only events in town which does not take taxpayer dollars. It's a zero taxpayer dollar based event. So it's fundraised by the Veterans Committee, and we pretty much fundraise the whole event. With that said, I was also appointed to the Public Safety Committee, of which I was contributing so much time to the veterans that I focused solely on the Veterans Committee, and I couldn't do both.
Mr. Hassan, you sent out a mailer with pictures of Mayor Sid and others saying that they trusted you. The reality is the mayor does not support you. Why should voters trust you with their vote if you're sending out mailers suggesting that the mayor and others trust you when they're not endorsing you?
And I appreciate that question, Mr. Pinellas. The mailer specifically says that he supports, does not say he endorses my candidacy. You see, when we
Is that
do events,
misleading?
no, absolutely not. It would be a question for Mayor Sid and the other individuals that are on the banner, that are on the flyer, but in of itself.
Well, Mayor Sid criticized you in last Sunday's Neighbors article when he said that mailer was misleading.
Quite frankly.
What would you say to Mayor Sid?
I would frankly disagree, and that's a question that Mayor Sid has to do.
Well, he's not debating. He's not here.
But
I'm asking you.
And I appreciate the question. Bottom line is, those individuals which are on the mailer all supported everything that I did while I was on the Veterans Committee. On the reverse side of that mailer, it does have individuals that endorse my campaign. It has former interim mayor Cesar Metre. It has Frank Mingo, which was also a vice mayor. And it also has a community leader, Roberto Alonso. So where you read on one side it says supports, it actually says what it means, which is support. And on the flip side of that, you see the individuals that endorse my campaign.
Talking about Mayor Sid, so he has a slate, obviously, in this election. The slate is made up of Mr. Garcia. It's made up of Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Fernandez, are you a puppet of the mayor? Are you running to basically support his business?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think anybody that you speak to that has, known me or spoken to me regards me as an independent thinker, as somebody that problem solves. I solve problems in the business world on a daily basis.
Then tell me two things that you disagree with the mayor on.
I think there's several things I disagree with the mayor.
I only want two.
Okay, good. I think our infrastructure improvements need to happen faster, right? I think a lot of times we get caught up in small accomplishments, but we have broken sidewalks, we have poor drainage, we have things that every time I knock on a door and a resident shows me a picture of water inside their garage, it shows me that we're not moving in the right direction as far as infrastructure.
How do you disagree with the mayor on that? I don't understand. The mayor's actually advocated for more spending. He's advocated for bond programs. So I don't get it. How is it that you disagree with him on infrastructure?
Well, I don't think infrastructure has been the priority. I think other things have become the priority.
Okay. What's number two? What's the second thing you disagree with him on?
Off the top of my head, let me think of the last disagreement that I had.
All right, think about that for a moment. Mr. Garcia, are you a puppet of the mayor?
I'm a puppet to no one, sir. I appreciate the mayor, what he's done. I think he's doing a good job. I think the town is moving in the right direction. I do agree that infrastructure is something that's lacking. I would give the town a C-, and that's not my opinion. Those are residents that I've spoken to.
So are you saying specifically that you disagree with the mayor's focus on infrastructure?
No, I think we need more focus on infrastructure.
Okay, then what do you disagree with on the mayor?
Well, putting more focus on infrastructure, of course.
Well, you just said that was not the issue. I need to know. Voters want to know if you're independent or not.
Sure.
Okay? You're on the mayor's slate, as is Mr. Fernandez. Okay?
Well,
so
here's the thing.
Are you just going to vote the way the mayor wants you to vote on issues, or are you going to be your own person?
Of course, I'm an independent voter. I'm gonna vote.
Then tell me what you disagree with with the mayor or the manager, for that matter. What do you disagree with?
Well,
what's wrong with the town?
Well, the town is a C+ rating according to residents I speak to. The Parks Department. I was a former Parks Director. I think Optimus Park should have gone done years ago.
I'll get back to that question. So I want you guys to think about it a little bit.
All right.
Mr. Hassan, is this election a referendum on the mayor? You don't enjoy his support. I know he's not on the ballot. I know he was reelected without opposition. But some people feel that your opponent and Ms. Ruano's opponent are basically there to bid the mayor's business. What do you say?
I think whatever interest Mr. Fernandez jumped into the race when he initially filed, I mean, I'm going to call it all into question, to be quite honest with you.
What do you mean? I don't understand. What do you mean call what into question? He has the right to run.
Absolutely, but I think when you brought up earlier your political action committee, the one that you contributed to, Community Voice, and you see a list of special interest groups that have donated to the campaign of the Community Voice, which is supporting both
I did
these
see
two
that, by the way,
individuals.
and I was shocked. I was not aware of that when I made the contribution.
I think issues like that have to call into question, are they going to be puppets, and will they be puppets? And in my estimation, I candidly believe they are.
So you're saying this is a referendum on the mayor?
I absolutely believe it is.
Ms. Ruano, it's highly unlikely, right? I mean, you typically don't see in a small town like Miami Lakes for the mayor to take on an incumbent colleague and run someone against that individual. What do you have to say to the mayor, but more importantly than to the mayor, what do you have to say to voters like myself who like the mayor? We like the mayor. I'm a voter of Miami Lakes and am confused.
Well, I think it's even more. I think it's even more unlikely that a mayor who appointed someone to a seat, an open seat, he had every possibility to appoint any resident of this community, and he chose me. He chose me for the leadership that I had proven as a resident, and the fact that he now chooses to endorse my opponent, who I have the utmost respect for, but quite frankly has not earned his stripes in the way that I have, being involved in the community for over 15 years. Not only the mayor, but some sitting council members as well have chosen to endorse my
So are
opponent.
you suggesting that the mayor doesn't like to be criticized?
Absolutely. I am
Absolutely,
not,
as in you do not believe he likes to be criticized?
absolutely, he does not like to be criticized, and he appointed me for being a strong, independent voice, and I am a strong, independent voice, and on many things I've agreed with him, but there are some big items that I do not agree with him on, and the mayor does not like to listen to some residents who have differences of opinion with him. I am very open to listening to anyone, even those that don't share my opinion. I think that's why we run for office, so that we represent all Miami Lakers, and that's something that he has shown interest in. It's an accolade, right? When he talks about my opponent, he says that he is going to be open to listening to all of Miami Lakers. But when I do that, it's frowned upon. So the mayor definitely is looking to replace me because I'm an inconvenience for him on the council.
So one of the big issues.
Can I respond to that? Do you mind?
No, I want to move on. I want to move on. Well, yes,
I'll
go
let
ahead.
you get
I'm
a
sorry.
chance
Go
to
ahead.
respond.
Go ahead.
There's a misconception that I was picked by the mayor to run. I want to say that's not true. I love this town. I've always loved this town. During this COVID crisis, I saw the town come together. I volunteered for groceries for seniors. I met a lot of residents who were in need. All of us here helped the community.
Yes.
And that really pushed me to say, you know what? I really want to serve. I've been a public servant in the past as a parks director. And I said, you know what? I love this town, and I want to do something to help. And that's
but
why.
Mr. Garcia, the mayor is openly supporting you against
Sure.
a sitting incumbent
Yeah.
member of the town council who, as she mentions, was nominated by him. I mean, that's extraordinary for a small town. It has a lot of voters very confused.
I committed to the residents, and I committed that I was going to walk the town.
And you couldn't even mention one thing that you disagree with the mayor on.
Well, because I think the town is headed in the right direction, and overwhelmingly, the people I talk to, 90%.
That sounds like a rubber stamp to me, sir.
Let me finish, Mr. Mayor. 90% of the town, the rubber stamp is the residents. The residents are telling me this. I've knocked on doors since May, thousands of doors. And they're telling me they're happy in the direction the town is going. They're also telling me they're happy with the city manager and how he's handling this crisis. Now, Ms. Ruano, you're the only person that voted against him.
Absolutely, I stand by that vote.
Well,
she voted against him on what?
Vote of no confidence
Vote
for
of
the
no confidence.
town manager.
Okay, let's
the
move
resident.
on
Well,
to some other.
this is important though. This is
Ray,
important.
you'll
Swimming
have time,
upstream for no
sir,
reason.
You'll have time later
Sure,
to
absolutely,
answer some
absolutely.
other questions. I want to get to the bridges because that's a big issue, 154th, 170. And I hope you listen to my question and you answer it, okay? Because I know you're all four of you have stated publicly that you would rather see the bridges closed. All four of you said that. That's not my question. If for whatever reason, litigation, good faith settlement discussions with the city of Hialeah, whatever the case may be, one of the bridges must be opened. My question is, which one and why? Mr. Fernandez.
170th, without a doubt. I think 154th Street is an F-rated street, both in the mornings and in the afternoons. I think it's irresponsible to put additional traffic to make it easier for people to get to 154th in the morning. I think it's detrimental to our public safety at those times where you have complete gridlock. It makes it very difficult for first responders to get through there.
Mr. Hassan?
I tend to agree, 170th, and I'll try to be as short as possible. I have two older children, one of them being 23 years old and the other one being 20 years old. I had to drive 154th along with many other residents in the morning. And the voices of complaints that you hear from residents as you walk and you canvass every single day is every single individual cares about that bridge maintaining itself closed on 154th. So if there's any bridge that needs to maintain itself closed, it's 154th. I'll add on to the fact that it took, it took 1 hour to get from 87th Avenue to the Palmetto, and then it takes about another 1 hour to get from downtown.
We know. Ms. Ruano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 170th undoubtedly, and the reason for that is because when we open a bridge, the agreement has to be mutually beneficial to both the city of Hialeah and the town of Miami Lakes. 170th is platted in the future to connect to the turnpike on the west side of I-75. So when Miami Lakers can use 170th to cross over it and go west and get onto the turnpike, that is beneficial for us. And I've told the city of Hialeah many times, we're not adamant about keeping these bridges closed forever, but we need to come to an agreement that's mutually beneficial to both cities.
Honestly, Hialeah's lack of planning shouldn't be our emergency. I believe none of those bridges should be open.
That's not the question,
No,
sir.
I understand, but the residents, none of the residents want these bridges open. If my sister's gonna kill me, she lives on 87th Avenue, I guess it would be 170, but those are two bad choices.
But you're asking to be elected. If you get elected, you gotta make choices.
Well, the only way I would consider 170 is if FDOT opens up some entrances to 75, if that's so you don't have that traffic, because that's the reason they cross over, is to get on 75.
So you're not as willing to throw the residents of 170th under the bridge like your colleagues here are?
No, of course not. Absolutely. It's a disgrace to false promises from Hialeah.
In the earlier debate, we talked a lot about blasting. And I don't need to tell the four of you and that's a major concern. Obviously, for my wife and our family, it's an issue that has followed us from Country Club of Miami when we lived there to our new home in Loch Lomond as well. Some would say that our state legislators have really been playing lip service to this issue. Mr. Garcia, how would you rate the job of Jose Oliva, who's the current Speaker of the House, has been there for 8 years? Do you think he and Mr. Manny Diaz and Rene Garcia and that leadership, have they done enough to protect the people of Northwest State from these blasting concerns?
No, of course they haven't done enough. They're trying things, but they haven't done enough. I mean, there's more studies happening, but
we've been hearing about studies forever.
You don't need a study to tell you. 2 earthquakes a day, 5 days a week for a decade.
So forget about the studies for a moment.
Destroys your house.
You've got the leadership of the legislature, a senior member of the Senate, the Speaker of the House.
Yes, they need to do more. Absolutely. And that's not me saying it. The residents are telling me they have to do more. I mean, just the other day I went to Francisco's house. He lives in Westlake. He showed me his house, and the tiles are destroyed. He has to
we know
redo
the problem.
tiles.
We know the problem.
But here's the thing. We have to put a face to the problem, Mayor. And we've known the problem for decades, and we continue to say we're going to do something about it. I'm actually angry and upset. My sister lives on the west side, and I've seen the cracks. She had to redo her driveway. This is costing thousands and thousands
Mr.
and
Fernandez,
thousands of dollars. This is ridiculous. It has to end, sir.
We've had strong legislative leaders. Have they done enough to protect the people of Northwest State from these blasting issues?
Not in regards to blasting, no. And I think one of the issue of blasting is obviously very complex. Otherwise, it would have come to some kind of resolution. But I think one of the biggest problems is particularly in Tallahassee for those leaders to contend to. The largest consumer of the product that gets mined in that mine is the Florida Department of Transportation. And so there's a conflict there when you're trying to convince the lawmakers that represent the rest of the state that don't hear the complaints from the residents about the blasting, and it becomes a, you know, not in my backyard kind of situation, but we're the only ones affected, right? So it's very difficult to get state leaders on board.
Mr. Hassan, should there be more local control over this issue? Would you support a transfer of the authority over blasting from Tallahassee to Miami-Dade County?
In my estimation, that I believe is how it should go. The transfer should go to the county. One of the leading advocates for the blasting, which is Michael Pouchates, an attorney in the town of Miami Lakes, which lives in Gramercy Park, he wants that transfer over to the county. He wants the ability to go after the blasting industry. And I think it's instrumental that we be given that leeway to give the residents of Miami Lakes and surrounding community, because this isn't only a Miami Lakes issue. This is affecting residents in PSN. This is affecting residents outside of Miami Lakes. And we have to be able to come together as a community and say no to the blasting committee.
Ms. Ruano, I'd like to hear your opinion on local control, but also how do you balance the quality of life issues, right, of your residents of Northwest Dade with the fact that this is an industry that is a huge economic generator, has created thousands of jobs. How do you balance that?
It's a difficult balance, and I think that one of the things that we need to touch upon is that the mining can be conducted in different ways. So the way that they're doing it now is probably the most cost effective, which is very intense blasts one time. If they divvy that up and they do smaller blasts over an extended period of time, that is something that would affect the residents less and still generate the same amount of product that they need to mine. I've been in Tallahassee. I've looked at senators and representatives in the eye, those that are from, you know, the Panhandle or from the northern parts of Florida, and I've explained to them how detrimental this is to our community. And they have looked at me and said, "Sweetheart, I'm sorry, but fracking is a main industry in my district, and I am not going to put my folks out of business to help your community." So I've been there. I've heard it straight from their mouth. I think that our legislative team in Tallahassee has an uphill climb. They've made the first initial steps to getting that conversation out there. We formed a blasting advisory board that I spearheaded, contrary to what our legislative team wanted me to do. But I listened to my residents. We moved forward on that, and we put forth recommendations that were taken to Tallahassee. So I've been there. I've done it. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we're well on our way.
So in the previous session with our legislative candidates, I asked a very pointed question, whether the Republican members of that panel running for state representative would support, in fact, would they sponsor a bill transferring control over blasting matters here locally. We got a pretty straight answer from Mr. Fabricio and a less definitive answer from Mr. Rizzo. My question is, if elected, would you support a resolution from the town of Miami Lakes urging whoever those state legislators are to not only sponsor but to forcefully advocate for that bill? Mr.
Yes.
Yes,
Fernandez.
absolutely. That's the way. Honestly, that's the way
Mr.
that
Hassan?
was before.
Absolutely, whichever the state
Mr.
representative.
Rano?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to some fiscal matters, because I think budget matters are part of your responsibility as council members. You are the fiduciaries of what is now, I believe, a $40 million budget, I believe.
42.
A $42 million budget. Your residents' hard-earned tax money goes into that budget, and there's a lot of debate as to what's the proper way of investing that money. I had an opportunity to review in some detail the Imagine Miami Lakes 2025, and while very ambitious, I was disappointed in seeing, first of all, no total price tag. So it was hard for me to determine what is this going to cost us. And the other big disappointment was how are we going to pay for it? Ms. Rana, you've been on the council for 3 years. why isn't there more, for a town that talks about transparency and having information forthcoming to its residents, why was it so hard for me to figure out what the total price tag was?
It's because no one's figured it out yet. It's a moving target. When you imagine things for many, many years in the future and you put forth a platform like Imagine 2025, there really is no price tag. Every year the number changes.
Then how do you pay for it?
You can't unless you pull a bond or pull a loan. You can't pay for it any other way. There's no way, you can't raise taxes enough to cover that. So that's one of the biggest differences
But Ms.
that I've
Serrano,
had.
you were the lone dissenting voice on the budget. You actually argued for a decrease in the millage rate, and I believe it was a 6-to-1 vote in the last budget. So how can you both lower the millage rate and begin the process of meeting all of those unmet capital needs for the town?
Well, there's a lot of needs on the Imagine 2025 platform that I wouldn't consider needs. To me, needs are infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, drainage. Those are needs. There's a lot of bells and whistles on there that I don't think that we need. I think that we need to go back to basics and
Can you give me some
figure out.
examples?
There are, I would say, computerized, synchronization in crosswalks, and there's a whole bunch. There's bike lanes that quite frankly, if we can afford them, we would have them, but that's not a necessity to have. There's a lot of different bells and whistles on there that I just don't support. Imagine 2025 wasn't really something that the council members put together. It was more put together by staff, and it was kind of, if you could imagine utopia, what would it be like? And it's nice to imagine, but sometimes it's unaffordable.
Mr. Fernandez, if you win this election, would you ask for a review of Imagine 2025? Would you want basically with a new town council, a revisiting of those priorities, kind of along the lines of what Ms. Serrano just mentioned?
Absolutely. I think Imagine 2025 is supposed to be a living document that is reviewed from time to time. I think
But doesn't it include some things that are necessary? I mean, I saw things there that, that I think are important.
There's absolutely tons of things that are in there that are necessary, and quite frankly, things that will not get resolved unless we make tough decisions.
Tough decisions like what? What are you referring to?
Tough decisions like not being beholden to the rollback rate every single year. We cannot expect our government to produce the same level of service with less money.
But Mr. Fernandez,
yes,
in
sir.
all of your literature, you want to keep taxes low. Do you understand that the only way you do not raise taxes is by a rollback rate?
Yes, I understand.
If you leave the millage rate flat and property values have increased, you are increasing taxes, sir. Do you know that?
I am increasing taxes, yes. What increased the taxes in this case would be rising property values. But yes, I understand. I'm not trying to get rid of responsibility for suggesting that we may increase property taxes, but I intend, my platform is to keep taxes low, not to close myself off and not consider a tax increase when there are projects in our town that warrant it.
So to be clear, because we want voters to be very clear, you are okay with leaving the millage rate as it is, even if it means that Miami Lakes residents will actually pay more?
Yes.
Mr. Hassan, do you agree with that?
No, absolutely not. In a year like this year, in 2020, people lost their jobs. I was knocking on doors. I've knocked over 3,000, 4,000 doors in Miami Lakes. People lost their jobs. People lost their businesses. My family has a small business in Hialeah. I own a small business in Miami Lakes. I own a family-owned law practice in Miami Lakes. I know the hardships that those individuals are going through. Quite frankly, in a year like 2020, we could have never, when I saw it, I was flabbergasted, to be quite honest with you. And when you talk about Imagine 2025, I disagree completely with some of the projects that are in there. I'll tell you, for instance, the Par 3. The Par 3 sits right behind my house. How can we consider such a large project, which is $3 million, or a floating
But
rate of $2 million?
wouldn't you agree that there are some priorities there that are worthy of support?
Absolutely.
And
there
how
are
would you
some.
pay for it then?
Well, there is budgeted money. There was one issue that came up on the dais when they were discussing the budget, and there was a $3.5 million that was earmarked for something else. Well, in a budget year like this year, you don't earmark the money. I'll tell you another project which I disagree with. And this has been thrown out there as far as that's not a project that we're on anymore. But it did make the budget, interestingly enough, which is the Optimist Park. The floating budget on the Optimist Park has floated between $10 to $20 million. When you look at it at Miami Lakes, when you look at it, Imagine 2025, it's on there for $4.5 million. But that discussion's been had on June 25th.
But Mr. Hassan, just a moment though, and I want to ask this of Mr. Garcia because he mentioned earlier that he's coached at the Optimist Club as I have.
Absolutely.
How would you compare, for example, the Optimist Park to some of the ball fields in Broward?
Unfortunately, I give it a D, and I'll tell you why. I was a former parks director, so I was responsible for building ball fields. This park was built, the lighting was put in, the old infrastructure was put in by volunteers, by the Optimist Club. They did a real good job, but that infrastructure is 40 years old. Guys, we cannot continue to ignore the heart of our community, which is Optimist Park.
So my question then is, how do you pay for those improvements?
Well, I can tell you how you pay for them. You don't take money away from, like, for example, last year we had to take money away from the Optimist Park project to help out with, to balance our budget. We don't do that. We don't lower the millage rate. What are we gonna say? It's been 20 years.
2 years ago, Mayor Sid floated the idea of a bond issue for parks and other improvements. In fact, he has stated in this campaign that one of the reasons he opposes your opponent and Mr. Hassan is because you both have been critical of that bond issue. Very specifically,
Sure.
Would you support a bond issue that would include improvements to the Optimist Park to put it at a par with other ball fields in other parts of South Florida?
Not at this time, and I'll tell you why. Because there's money already set aside for Optimist Park, right? Right now, we need to redo the fields and redo the lighting. So that's because it floods all the time. And I know you have and I have helped the staff there when it floods, squeegeeing the water off, putting dirt on the home plate, because these kids have been waiting for 2 weeks because they've been rained out for 2 weeks. The initial need right now is for flooding and for lighting. And the money is there for that. We cannot continue to ignore this. It's been 20 years.
Mr. Fernandez, you mentioned that you would be willing to propose some additional taxes for some projects. Could you name some? So what are some of the projects that in your mind would warrant your support in terms of a tax increase?
Absolutely. So seemingly every single house that I knock on, particularly on the west side of town, it's all drainage, sidewalks, and issues with trees, right? But drainage and sidewalks are the bigger issue. And so for me, kind of going back to the earlier question, if I may, it's difficult for me to tell a homeowner that they will continue to get water intrusion and waves of water into their house, but also proudly say that I saved them $4 a year by not rolling back the millage rate, right? That doesn't, I can't do that knowing that there are critical infrastructure needs in the town.
Ms. Ruano and Mr. Hassan, very quickly, the bond issue. 2 years ago, it was proposed by the mayor, Mayor Sid, again, and just this last Sunday, criticized both of you for your opposition to the bond issue. What is your position on a bond issue for the city, for the town, I should say, Mr. Hassan?
When you talk about Miami Lakes Optimist Park, and I believe what you're talking about is the June 25th, 2018 platform, correct? That's the Parks and Green Space
That
capital
is
program?
correct, and it was part of the debate we had 2 years ago, correct?
Well, I wasn't part of that debate
Well,
2 years ago, but
correct.
no, I oppose that bond in of itself. I mean, we got to focus on our residents. The residents have spoken candidly. When we talk about stormwater drainage, yes, but that money's already been proposed. That money's already there. That's already been done, gone past us. It's a matter of getting the projects done right now because those projects are going to 2028. We need to focus on the stormwater drainage issues, number one. I spoke to an individual by the name of Lázaro on 148th and 88th Lane, and that individual told me that his Nissan Frontier, which is a SUV truck, his transmission had broken down in the floodwater. That's an issue because you can't go to a park if you can't get out of your house.
Ms. Ruano, do you think the mayor's opposition to your reelection has something to do with your opposition to the bond issue?
Absolutely, absolutely. We were all surprised with that proposal a few years back when it came up. And the reality is that we could have made improvements to the Optimist Park because we spent $500,000 drawing up the the artwork for that park at those heavy price tags that we didn't have funding for. So somewhere, someone truly believed that we were going to pull a bond and that we were going to build this park. Otherwise, we wouldn't have spent $500,000 in renderings. That could have improved the fields. It could have improved the lighting. As a matter of fact, the lighting can be done based on an energy savings program. We can redo the lighting. But no one has wanted to have the conversation about what we can do with the money that we have, because we continue to imagine. We continue to look at other municipalities and covet what they have instead of embracing what Miami Lakes has. And that's just how I feel about the town. We're a small town. We're a close-knit community. We need to embrace that and stop visiting our neighbors and looking at what they have and wanting to bring it to our town.
Let's shift our attention to COVID-19 for a moment. Of course, Miami Lakes has not been immune to that issue. One of the issues that's caught my attention over the last several months is this whole back and forth between the county and the municipalities over the CARES Act monies, okay? Mr. Ruano, I found very interesting, I reviewed the town of Miami Lakes submittal to the county for $3.4 million. When I saw that almost a quarter of that money was for a program called Miami Lakes Tutoring Grants. This is a program to provide Miami Lakes parents and an estimated 1,700 students access to learning and tutoring services through a $600 per student voucher. Should the town of Miami Lakes be in the business of asking for CARES Act money for a program that is arguably the responsibility of the school system?
Absolutely not. We should not. There's many things on that list that I disagreed with. As a matter of fact, we had an emergency meeting while I was traveling that I participated on via telephone conversation, and I expressly told the manager that none of the things that are on that list that are not essential should be on there and should be in our plan. Just because there are CARES Act dollars that are floating around the county somewhere doesn't mean that we need to bring up a list of things that we don't necessarily need in order to pull some of that funding. And that is one of the many reasons why I was a no vote of confidence on the town manager at this last town meeting.
Mr. Garcia, how would you rate the performance of the town so far on its COVID response and recovery?
I think they've been extremely transparent. I think they're doing a great job of educating the public. I think they're being as safe as they can. I live personally on Main Street, and I saw Main Street businesses suffer, but I know that the town wants to reopen, and they have reopened in a safe way, and I agree. I think they're doing an excellent job. I think the city manager has done an extraordinary job in communicating that to the residents every day for months, along with the mayor. They also started Mental Health Thursdays to help the residents cope with all the issues with that. And can I just briefly pivot to something that she said about spending those CARES Act dollars to help parents who have to go back to work, who are essential workers here in Miami Lakes, help pay for childcare for their kids. This is the most important time. This is a unique situation in the United States.
It's not childcare, sir. It was a voucher
or
for tutoring.
Okay.
To me, it smacked of some deal with some private tutoring service, and it's a line item in the town's budget. In fact, I was also curious to see a controversy in Facebook regarding Ms. Ruano, and where she was, criticized for supposedly not supporting teachers. Do you think Ms. Ruano has been sufficiently supportive of teachers?
Well, I think she's done a lot for the community when it comes to kids and teachers, yes. However...
But she's opposing,
well,
she does not think, okay, the specific question is, because you raised it.
Yeah.
No,
let me finish the train of
thought. And I'm not
thought.
talking about childcare.
No, okay, I understand that.
I'm talking about a tutoring grant, $1,050,000, which she opposes as part, I'm not saying it's not a worthy project, it may be a fantastic project, but if you get elected, you're gonna have to make decisions.
Yeah.
Should that have been part of the CARES Act submittal? She says no, and has been criticized by teachers. Was that a fair criticism of Ms. Ruano? Has she been fair to teachers?
Well, I can say that words hurt, and sometimes things come off the wrong way, and she did hurt some teachers with her words, and then she apologized for it. And
Ms. Ruano, did you hurt teachers with your words?
The conversation wasn't about teachers. The conversation was about educational pods, and it was something that we were voting on in our town council. And my statement was that teachers needed to get back to work. And the reason why I use that language is because we had our meeting in the summer. Teachers were on summer break. So it wasn't reflected at teachers not working at all. On the contrary, I've dedicated most of my service career to helping teachers better the educational environment. It was taken out of context for political gain. We all know that. It was blasted all over social media to hurt my campaign, and many people have seen through it at this point. And I did express my clarification statement to the teachers, because I think that what they went through during this pandemic, what they're still going through today, because I have many friends that are teachers. Teachers aren't teaching. Teachers are IT technicians. Teachers are learning how to navigate new platforms. The K-12 platform was disastrous in the public school system. Most teachers want their children back in their classrooms. And when you talk about spending all of these unnecessary dollars or opening education pods so that we can somehow Band-Aid the closure of schools, that's something that I didn't support.
Mr. Fernandez, you know, this COVID issue really requires all hands on deck. All hands on deck. Some residents have indicated a concern because you have a business called, I believe it's called Layers 8 Solutions, that runs in 8 different states or 7 different states. Do you have enough time? I mean, this is a major, this COVID recovery required. Are you going to be able to dedicate enough time to your job as a member of the council to focus on issues like this in light of your business interests?
Yes, I absolutely can, and I think the best example of that is past performance, right? So I've owned this business for over 10 years, and I've still made the time to be active and be a fixture at town hall, and I've been to every council meeting for the last 5 years.
But you've only lived in the town for 5 years, correct?
But I've been to 4 years worth of council meetings, which I assure you is about 4 years more than my counterpart has.
The town of Miami Lakes imposed a curfew before it was mandatory countywide. Was that a mistake?
Yes.
Why?
Because it hurt our businesses at the time that our businesses needed the most of our support, right? So at the same time that we're juggling a potential, curfew, we were also simultaneously trying to keep our businesses afloat.
Okay, so I just helped you answer a question
Yes.
I asked earlier, which was to tell me something you disagreed with the mayor and the manager on. So you disagreed with their decision to,
Yes.
Mr. Hassan, the curfew.
In regards to,
The curfew, the town of Miami Lakes imposed a curfew before it was mandatory countywide. Was that a mistake?
you know, Mayor Penales, I don't know if you're aware, but my family suffered from COVID. I myself went through COVID between the dates of June and mid-July. My wife, I actually had to take her and get hospitalized at Baptist Hospital. I have 4 children in my house, a 7 and 8-year-old, like I said before, now 20-year-old and a 24-year-old. I think COVID's a big issue
We
in the
all agree,
community.
sir. The question is the curfew. I'm trying to figure out if the curfew was warranted before the county imposed it, or as some would say, it was more of a political stunt.
I don't think we needed a curfew in of itself, because individuals at nighttime
Rano?
aren't the ones.
Absolutely not, and I voiced that opinion on the dais, on the virtual dais. I actually questioned Commissioner Bovo on that, because I could not understand why in a community where we had just a few COVID cases, we needed to impose more restrictions on our businesses and residents. It was uncalled for, unnecessary, and I opposed it from the get-go.
Mr. Garcia?
Yeah, at the time of the curfew, I don't think it was needed, but as we see, there's another uptick coming up. And in order to get over this, we need to do everything possible for the residents to social distance, wear their masks, make sure they're not out when they're not supposed to be, without hurting businesses.
Talking about businesses.
I've seen Miami Lakes.
Today, should restaurants in the town of Miami Lakes be open 50% for indoor dining or 100%, Mr. Garcia?
Right now, 50%, because there's an
Ms.
uptick.
Ruano?
I would go with 50% right now.
Same, 50%.
50%.
Very good. Let's move on to some other issues that the town has faced in the last few months. We know that Miami Lakes was thrust to the forefront of protests after the George Floyd murder. So my question, let's start off with you, Mr. Garcia.
Sure.
Do Black Lives Matter?
All lives matter, and Black Lives Matter, of course.
And what would you say to those who felt that those protests were unwarranted in the town of Miami Lakes?
Listen, it's our right as individuals to protest, but the first time you pick up a rock and throw it, you're no longer a protester. So I think the protest they had was every American's right, and then the counter rally and counter protest was every American's right as well. And the police department and the town and the residents handled it very well. There was no incidents of violence that I heard about. You guys heard of any incidents of violence? I didn't hear about anything. They had I believe two protests and then 2 rallies after, and everything went smoothly. Nobody got hurt, and everybody had a chance to express their voice.
Mr. Ruano, as you know, the town contracts with Miami-Dade Police for services. One of the issues that arose after the George Floyd incident was whether the county should have a Citizens Police Oversight Board. There were certain versions. Eventually, Barbara Jordan's revised ordinance became law. Do you believe the county should have a Citizens Police Oversight Board to, among other things, review police conduct?
It depends on who's going to sit on that board. I have no problem with oversight in any capacity, in any field, but it would depend on who's going to sit on that board. It would need to be compromised of retired police officers who actually know what the rules are and what the rules of engagement are, because regular citizens sometimes don't comprehend, right, what part of the police training is and how police are to react to certain situations. So I would need to know who's going to be forming part of that board.
And should the cost of running that board be borne by the regular police budget?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No defunding of any police hours or of any community policing should ever happen.
Mr. Hassan, you serve as a director of the Miami Lakes Bar Association, correct?
That is correct.
After this incident, the Bar Association put out this, I'm not even gonna call it a statement. I guess it's a graphic, okay? And the graphic on the association's website says, the Miami Lakes Bar Association stands against racism, hate, and injustice, today, tomorrow, and always. Did that statement go far enough?
I believe it does, and we discussed it at length. Ms. Alton, the one that spoke previously here, the president, we discussed at length as far as what we're going to release. Not only do I sit on that board, by the way, I also sit on the board for Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, statewide and local in Miami-Dade. And I also sit on the Florida Bar Grievance Committee, where we overlook attorneys' misconduct. When we submitted that form, I believe it spoke adequately as far as how we stand as an organization.
What would you say to those who feel that that statement did not go far enough and makes no mention of the right to protest?
Well, it's not going to be a fully encumbersome document. I mean, if we're going to make a document that's fully going to be encumbersome, we would be editing a 4-page document as far as the organization.
You guys managed to do it with less than 10 words here. Why couldn't the Bar Association, which you are a director of, and I assume you were part of these discussions, not also stand up for the right for peaceful protest, like Mr. Garcia mentioned?
We're not sitting in the capacity as far as whether we're going to support or not support peaceful protests. I support peaceful protests.
You took a stand
like
on
racism.
Mr. Fernandez. Did the bar miss an opportunity here to stand up and make a statement? And Mr. Hassan's a member of the board. Did they miss an opportunity?
Perhaps, but I think that's a matter for them to decide.
Okay. Mr. Fernandez, regarding the bridge issue, Mayor Hernandez from the city of Hialeah said that Miami Lakers are racists. What's your response to that?
That's extremely offensive.
It's offensive. Do you support Miami Lakes having its own zip code?
Yes.
Do you think that's elitist?
No.
So you see no inconsistency with, on the one hand, Mr. Hernandez's statement and your statement right now that you want the town of Miami Lakes to have its own zip code, which many feel is an isolation, a separation from the town, from the city of Hialeah.
So one of the big issues that I run into all the time is voter confusion. I get friends of mine that, hey, I live in Miami Lakes, I would like to vote for you. And they don't live in Miami Lakes. They live in PSN, they live in unincorporated Dade, they live somewhere else. And I think voter confusion is a big problem that the zip code addresses. It's not about it being elitist. It's about having a community identity.
I want to move on to a couple of questions that were submitted via email to me. Residents were invited to submit questions. We didn't get many. I received 3, one of which I passed to Frank Bolaños because it had to do more with legislative issues. But Michael Volante is concerned, and by the way, I share some of these concerns because I've been seeing this as well, an increase of jet traffic at Opa-locka Airport. And he's asking whether there are any plans or any concerns that would help mitigate the noise and the pollution. Mr. Fernandez, are you hearing these complaints?
I'm not hearing the complaints, but I can attest to the fact that
What
I
can
do
be done?
notice. I'm not sure what can be done, but I will look into it and I will work hard to find a solution.
Mr. Hassan?
My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Pinellas. My office sits at 6175 Northwest 153rd Street. That's pretty much ground zero. That's right next to the Volante family. I hear the planes coming over my office, and I tend to agree. But what I will do is work with whatever bodies need to be worked with, including the FAA, in order to attempt to reduce those levels.
Ms. Ruano?
Thank you, Mayor Pinellas. I visited the Opa-locka Airport probably about a year and a half ago when these concerns first came up. I toured with the airport director. The concern then was with Amazon, with the Amazon warehousing, that they were going to be bringing new planes in. And what's actually happening is not so much that there's more traffic, but that there's larger jets that are landing there. There's some repair facilities there in the airport that repair large jets. So they do come in from time to time. They are very rowdy and very, very loud. But they did assure me that there is no difference in traffic, that it is still only an airport for small planes to land. If there were any change with that, I would be happy to go visit with them again and find a solution.
Now, Mr. Garcia, perhaps Ms. Ruano is not aware of the increased traffic. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing a lot of increased.
Well,
do you agree with Ms. Ruano?
No. There is a brand-new terminal, a Fontainebleau for private jets, and I live on Main Street. Come Friday, they fly in, spend the weekend in Miami. Well, it was more prevalent before COVID, and then fly off on Sundays. These little jets make as much noise as the big jets, and there's actually, I see, because they fly right over Main Street, more small jets. Now, of course, we have to work with Miami-Dade Aviation to be a voice. Any other plans of expansion, we need to approve and we need to sign off on, and we need to be a voice. Because I don't know about you, when you're walking the east side, knocking on doors, how many conversations you have to wait till the planes go by? All the time. So this, for them on the east, is as intrusive as blasting in the west.
Another question from Juan Carlos Fernandez. He was interesting regarding the mega mall, which was the subject of a discussion during the earlier forum. He believes that this may actually increase values in the surrounding area, and is asking whether the town should support the mega mall project. Mr. Garcia?
I don't support the mega mall project.
Ms. Ruano?
I don't think that as a town we should be involved in supporting or not supporting it.
Mr. Hassan?
I tend to agree with Ms. Ruano. I don't believe we should be involved. However, I will caveat with this. If they are going to go in, they should chip in for infrastructure issues as far as our roadways, sidewalks, maintenance of our area that'll be addressed, that'll be an issue should they come in.
Mr. Fernandez?
Yes, and to piggyback on his point, infrastructure dollars and traffic impact fees are distributed amongst an entire transportation improvement corridor, which the one that we're a part of extends all the way to Aventura. So I think the biggest thing that we can do as a council is advocate for those dollars to be used in our backyard, not in Aventura, right here where the impact is going to be felt.
Okay, we have maybe 10 minutes left, so I want to ask some rapid fire questions. So if you could keep your responses very, very brief, I think it would be helpful. Among the questions voters will face are a series of constitutional amendments. Amendment 2 seeks to raise the minimum wage for the state of Florida. Would you recommend a yes or no vote, Mr. Fernandez?
No.
Why?
In private practice, I don't have a single employer that makes less than $15 an hour, but I do understand that there are certain unskilled labor positions that are going to make it very difficult for businesses to survive at a $15
Mr. Hassan?
wage.
I tend to agree. No.
Ms. Ruano?
I'm an accountant, so small businesses are what I work with on a daily basis. Many of them cannot afford a $15 minimum wage.
Mr. Garcia?
I have a different view. I think we've all seen how important essential workers are. Most essential workers are minimum wage workers. Absolutely raise the minimum wage. I don't know about $15, but definitely raise the minimum wage past $8, $9. They shouldn't have to work 3 jobs, and they've been doing things to protect our families during this COVID crisis. And I understand small businesses are hurting during this time, but there has to be a discussion about paying people what they deserve, a living wage. And that's not controversial to me, because I've seen the amazing work that essential workers have done in this COVID crisis. So they
Another
deserve it.
amendment on the ballot would allow all voters to participate in primary elections for the legislature. It's called the All Voters Amendment, which would allow non-party affiliated voters to participate in partisan elections. That's not my question, though. My question is, should the town of Miami Lakes have partisan elections, Mr. Garcia?
Absolutely not.
Ms. Ruano?
I agree, absolutely not.
No.
Mr. Fernandez? No. Should the town have, would you support an ordinance changing the charter of the town of Miami Lakes to provide for a strong mayor, Mr. Fernandez?
No.
No.
Mr. Hassan?
No.
No, I think it's working fine.
The next question has to do with your town manager. There was somewhat of a controversial selection process a few years back. My question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the job of the town manager? You all are his ultimate boss. And why, Mr. Garcia?
Well, I would give him an 8 right now, especially during the most difficult crisis in our country's history, in our town's history. I think he's done an excellent job. And
Are you ready to answer the question I asked at the beginning, to tell me one thing that you disagree with the mayor on?
Well, the curfew was something I disagree with the mayor on. Also, the 2025 Imagine, it could be more detailed and more focused, focusing on our main concern, which is living up to our promises. The city incorporated, one of the major reasons was Optimus Park. 20 years later, it's still in the same condition. Well, it's improved a lot, but it still needs a lot of work.
Ms. Ruano, they rate the job of the town manager?
I'd rate him a 6.
Why?
And particularly because there's a lot of budgeting issues that we differ on. I think that his mentality is very big government and not so much streamlined business. I come from the private sector, so I have a different view on what our budget should be like. And another reason is how he handled the closure of City Hall, the closure of the building department, not having proper access to our residents for some of our staff members. I disagree with that.
Mr. Hassan?
I would rate him a 7 quite. This is the issue. When we did the Jingle Ball Jog 5K 3 years back, he was on that board as far as how to get that thing together and how to get it running. And we started in March and worked our way the whole way until September, until we can receive funds for the Jingle Ball Jog. And that was a critical issue. Had he known the direction as far as how to do it, then it would have been done right away, and we could have been receiving funds in the early part of March to April. Now, that goes with saying that I give him a lot of respect in the fact that he's one of the individuals, and I sat on the committee for the past 4 years now, that he's one of the only individuals that when he was going to be manager, or he was seeking to be appointed, he visited every single committee meeting and was the only one that did that. So I give him a lot of respect for that. But there are issues that I have found as being the chair of the Veterans Committee.
Mr. Fernandez?
I would rate him an 8. 2 reasons why he doesn't get the 10, right? One is the curfew, and 2, I think probably the biggest area that our government can improve is speed, right? I think one of the most frustrating things coming from the private sector is the speed at which government operates, and I think that's something that we can fix organizationally.
Mr. Fernandez, would you support naming a street in the town of Miami Lakes on behalf of former United States Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
No.
Mr. Hassan?
You know, I recently supported naming a street in my own neighborhood after an officer. But that individual lived 2 doors down from me and passed away from COVID. The thing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she has no ties to Miami Lakes. And I think we need to recognize individuals in the town of Miami Lakes and recognize them for what they've done. We have many individuals in our community that have done wonderful things, including this one individual that served our community for 33 years, including Rita
And Ms.
Lee.
Ginsburg hasn't done great things for the town of Miami Lakes in prompting up civil rights and advocating on behalf of minorities and the less fortunate?
But she wasn't a resident of the town of Miami Lakes.
Well, I understand, but there's a lot of people that impact Miami Lakes who don't live there. Ms. Ruano, while obviously this is not a decision that the town of Miami Lakes will directly make, would you support a resolution in the town of Miami Lakes urging the United States Senate to approve the nomination of Amy Coney Barquette before the November 3rd election?
I would, yes. I've been watching all of the hearings on television from my office. I think that she's an incredibly competent woman, and I think that she would be a wonderful addition to the Supreme Court.
Mr. Garcia?
Yeah, I think she's a competent, she'd be a good judge, I believe, and I support that.
Should Miami Lakes police officers, and obviously I know they are hired by the county, should they assist the United States Immigration and Custom Enforcement Agency in detaining illegal immigrants, Mr. Fernandez?
I think they should follow whatever the law is.
Mr. Hassan?
You know,
Right up your alley.
This falls exactly down my alley, interestingly enough. You know, I've tossed that idea back and forth, considering that I was with the Florida Board of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and I don't believe that they should step foot in that. That's a separate issue. I should play their part, and the Miami Lakes, the Miami-Dade Police Department should do what they need to do in order to keep our community safe and keep our residents safe.
Ms. Ruano, who is the town's first mayor?
Town's first mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my goodness, it's on the seal, it's on the front of the. It escapes me. It escapes me. So it's on our lobby. It's in our lobby. It escapes me.
Mr. Garcia, who is the principal at the Miami Lakes K through 8?
Actually, that name escapes me as well. I'm sorry about that.
Mr. Fernandez, what's the mascot for Barbara Goldman Senior High?
Go Gators.
Very good. Mr. Hassan, some people have suggested that the town of Miami Lakes should annex to the north. Yay or nay?
I'll answer a couple of questions. Wayne Slane was previous mayor, number 1.
Well, good. Yeah, that's correct.
And I remember you asking me that question regarding Miami Lakes K through 8 2016.
It's a different
Those
principle
are
now,
the
though.
ones that stayed in my head.
I gave you a softball this time, though.
But no, I don't believe that we should annex to the north or to the south, whichever way they want to go.
In an effort to keep on time, I'd like each of you to spend a few moments, try to be brief, and perhaps closing for closing arguments, speaking directly to voters why they should support your campaign. Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank all the candidates and Miami-Dade County, Miami-Dade North. Well, my name is Ray Garcia. I'm a father of 5 children. I love this town. I think it's an oasis, and we need to protect it. It's a unique town. People, you live here one day or you live here 20 years. You love the town, you respect the town. I've walked the neighborhoods of this town for 6 months, and the residents are amazing. And I vow to get their ideas, and my platform is going to be your ideas, is basically what I'm trying to say. And I'm going to continue to walk this town. If I'm humbled enough to be elected by you, instead of having office hours, I'm going to continue every year to knock on every door of every town, of this town, and continue to get your feedback, and continue to get your ideas to better the town. I have 4 years' experience as a parks director for a local municipality. I've done the job that we're asking our administration to do. I've run budgets over $1 million. I've had employees up to almost as much as the city has now, responsible for projects, for park projects, responsible for events. As a small town parks director, you wear many hats, and even some PR with the media. Coupled with my experience in the private sector, I work for a Fortune 40 company, responsible for lead managers for over 100 agents, insurance agents here in Florida, and their revenue's worth over billions of dollars, and that's a responsibility I've had for 10 years. I think that experience, coupled with the fact that I was a park director, I've done the work, plus loving this town the way I do, and it was my dream to live in this town, to live on Main Street. As a kid, my parents would take me to Main Street, and I would look up at the balconies, and I say, one day I'm going to live there, and I'm living here, and I love it.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor, and I didn't get an opportunity to do so at the beginning. Thank you to the Miami Lakes Bar Association. Thank you for moderating, and thank you to Miami-Dade College. I think the most important thing is, so I've been walking, I've knocked on thousands of doors, and I think the overwhelming sentiment is that Miami Lakes is moving in the right direction. And to those residents that I've spoken to, I hear you. I hear you on, just because we're moving in the right direction doesn't mean that we should be complacent. I think, there are always opportunities to do better. And so I want to tell the residents that I've already spoken to that I hear you. I hear your concerns. I hear your ways of improving the town, and I will work absolutely as hard as I possibly can to make those improvements happen. I have my experience in the private sector is that of solving problems and dealing with issues. Just now, due to COVID, my firm outfitted over 2,600 classrooms with equipment to do remote live instruction. And so I think in the face of challenges, I will be there. I will be there to think outside the box, to find solutions that are not always, the low-hanging fruit, not always the obvious, but take a little bit more, more effort to get to. It's usually worth it in the end. And to those residents that maybe I haven't spoken to, I'll be speaking to you quite shortly.
Thank you, Mr.
And I look forward to serving. Thank you.
Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mayor Pelez. And thank you, Town of Miami Lakes. Thank you, Miami Lakes Bar Association, Economic Development Committee, Eddie Blanco. My name's Naib Hassan. I've lived here 24 years, not 5 years, 24 years. I lived in the Loch Ness community. From there, I went off and I studied off in law school, and I came back to this community because I do love it. I love for everything it stands for. My children, I have 4 of them. I want to make sure that we keep our community safe. My brother lives in this community. I own my business in this community, and I have my 2 elderly parents, which are 82 and 68 years old. The focus needs to be on our residents. The focus can't be on these grandiose ideas regarding Imagine 2025, beautification of parks. We need to keep government small and make sure our taxes remain low. The platform is essentially very simple, and most residents at this point in time have seen my platform, and I've knocked on most of the doors. It's ensure our public safety. As a former prosecutor, an individual that's on the front lines with law enforcement officers day in, day out, I can assure you that I will work to ensure the safety of our community. Avoid the misspending of dollars and not raise your taxes. That goes essentially to the Imagine 2025 plan and some of the projections that are there. Minimize blasting. I'll work with whatever state representative there is in order to ensure that we minimize blasting. Additionally, true government transparency. Not a perception of transparency, but true government transparencies. Unlike my opponent, I have no business ties with any of the council members on the dais. And I will not have any businesses with any of the council members on the dais. Additionally, I'll work for traffic relief and maintain the bridges closed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Ruano.
Thank you, Mayor Penedez. And my apologies, I thought that you had asked me who was the first town manager, and that's why the name escaped me. Mayor Slayton, if you're watching, please forgive me.
Sorry about that.
I have been a resident for 23 years. I have proven my leadership. I'm not afraid to ask difficult questions. I'm not afraid to hold our employees, our manager accountable. I'm not afraid to hold my council members accountable, or the mayor even. I have worked for this community for over 15 years. I'm always there to serve the residents. My campaign is their campaign. My seat belongs to the residents of the town of Miami Lakes. Whatever their priorities are, that's what I've always made my priority. I have a proven track record. I've gotten the job done. I'm certain that my opponent is a wonderful person, a wonderful Miami Laker, and I know that he means well. But I think that when you have proven leadership and you have the opportunity to vote for that again, that is the direction that I, as a voter, would take. My name is Marilyn Ruano. I'm asking for your support on November the 3rd. I'm a mom. I'm a business owner. I am proud to serve as your councilwoman and hope that I can continue to serve each and every Miami Lakes resident.
Well, I want to thank the four of you. I think you all did very well.
Thank you, Mayor.
Congratulations. I think the town of Miami Lakes is fortunate to have such quality individuals willing to serve us, including me. I'm a resident and taxpayer in the town, so we're very fortunate. Again, congratulations. You all did a great job today. And I know I speak on behalf of all of the residents. We wish you much luck in the coming weeks. And for those of you who are watching, you could vote today if you've got your ballot at home. And starting Monday, early voting begins. I believe the early voting site in Miami Lakes will be open, as it always is.
Yes, sir.
On the west side, is the library open also? Is it only the one?
Just Mary Collins Community
Just Mary
Center.
Collins.
7 to 7. 7 to 7.
Correct. Well, I think the first week it's 7 to 7 each
7
day.
to 7
7 to 7 each day.
You'll find us there.
So there's no reason why voters can't go out and vote. I'll be voting early myself, hopefully Monday or Tuesday. So again, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.